Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Hotline League. We're returning after taking a quick break from last week's show. And guess what? There's some stuff that went down. We have some guests who might not have much of an opinion on that, but they will have an opinion on the stuff that's going to go down in the next week. We'll probably be talking about all that stuff in a moment, but we're going to get into that. Before I do, let me introduce my co-host for the evening. It's none other than Cubby. How's it going, Cubby?
I'm doing great. Excited to be joined by these two. And yeah, we wrapped up my final cast this week. And for America's Challengers, congrats to Pain Gaming Academy for winning. And excited for Worlds coming up here.
Yeah. Is it strange, I guess, when you know that it's your final cast there? I mean, you could get booked to cast something else, right?
Yeah, I could. But, you know, being who I am, I'm kind of a Dirty League one trick. So a little bit harder to cover cast other games. But
is there no like random collegiate stuff in the off season?
There's an event I worked in the past where they used student casters this time around, which is a great experience for them. But obviously, I don't get to fly out this time. So we'll see what pops up. But a lot of the CLOL calendars actually shifted more towards spring. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, regardless, I'm glad that you get to sit back and enjoy Worlds. We're going to have some coverage as well over the course of it. Next up, we have, I think for the first time ever on the show, Jamada. Jamada, is this the first time you've been on the show?
Yeah, 100%. Never been here before.
I've been doing the show for so long, I never know who's on it anymore, you know?
I know because my Skype logs are
Oh,
from
that's
4
right,
years
yes.
ago. So, yeah.
We would have already been Skype friends because
exactly.
if that was the case, yes. Well, what time is it there?
It's 3 o'clock for me. I'm in London. So I'm 8 hours ahead of you guys on the West Coast.
Yes.
Yeah, it's actually really just my evening because I'm normally up this late anyway. So pleasure to be here, and it's thankfully not actually disturbed my sleep schedule that much. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad. Also, great background. I feel like so many people have.
That was the. I'm so sad because that background came from NLC 21.
Yep.
2020.
Yep.
I went on NLC like a year later and I didn't get that. So I missed out by 1 year on the cool background. Never got to experience that.
You can't send a PNG over. It's kept tight. Yeah, kept on lock.
Yeah. Well, regardless, we got Nymaera here as well. Nymaera, how's it going?
It's okay. It's 4 a.m. here, so it's slightly later. I've kind of shifted into gamer hours anyway, so it's less bad than it could have been, but I'd normally be going to sleep right now, so, you know, you're getting the dregs of Nymaera for today, but I'm still doing all right.
Do you need us to do anything on the show to keep your ego down? Because Reddit has just been nonstop Nymaera this, Nymaera that over the last week or so, and I'm wondering, has this inflated your ego?
I'm pretty wary when it comes to stuff like that because, I mean, so this is kind of like a look into me as a person. My name, my tag is really easy to search, so I can search it on any social media and see whatever anyone's talking about me.
And you do it all the time, I'm sure.
And I do it all the time because it's too obvious now and I get in my own head about it. So, half of it's very, very flattering when I see stuff, and the other half is just, oh my god, huge imposter syndrome, and like the one negative comment stands out. So I try not to delve into it too deeply when it gets too bad because, yeah, I mean, I'm happy with the community support, and that does make me feel pretty good. You can, I guess on the fly whether you need to put my ego down or not. I'll leave it in your capable hands.
I mean, I think what is funny, what I talk about, I remember talking about like a decade ago with a buddy of mine named Yut, was the concept of the Reddit rubber band, or even I guess just like the internet rubber band, where the more people hype you up and the more excited they are for you and the more positive sentiment you're seeing online, you're just stretching the rubber band out. And I would get scared sometimes whenever I'd see a lot of positive threads. Because you just
especially when they're in a short amount of time, because people don't want to see the same thing over and over. So in fact, I started, I recorded the video today, I put it on YouTube, and I've done some YouTube shorts which I'm starting to put out. I don't want to post them too soon, because if people see like one thread to do with someone, they're okay with that. If someone says like 4 threads to do with someone, they get a little bit pissed at that point.
Yeah, then you're just once
oversaturated.
The more you stretch the band, the harder the snapback is whenever you finally get the hate thread. Like I remember for years there was a lot of positive sentiment about me, And then there was, I think it was like in 2018 or something, right before All Stars, there was a Reddit thread that got a bajillion upvotes that just said Travis Gafford doesn't know how to interview, and it was just this massive post by this person who's like, well, like later on sent me a huge apology and was like, I don't know why I wrote that. I actually really like your content. It was just like the middle of the night, and I posted it. I'm so sorry that this happened. And it was just incredibly. It was like, okay, well, there was all the tension from several years of positivity.
It was probably Don Jake on a Reddit account.
I think it was
before he was actually in the scene.
Yes,
and he's just said it in chat.
He was trying to soften me up, you know, so that he could get his way in.
Dude.
Yeah. Well, either way, that was a fun trip down memory lane. But glad to have you both on. We're going to be talking about
thanks for having us.
Worlds and so much stuff. But Cubby, what other notable things have happened since we last did Hotline League 2 weeks ago?
Well, I don't know, Travis. It ended up on your YouTube. So I don't know if you're gonna
one
promote that.
One of the things ended up on my YouTube channel, but there was another thing that was that I guess I did a reaction video too on my YouTube channel. But you look confused. I did not break the JoJo news. I'll tell you that.
No, you did not. You reacted to it.
Yeah, exactly.
But we also had. I mean, there was the Americas announcement. But like, we really didn't learn that much outside.
The Americas announcement tilted me. Okay,
Tier 2 is gonna look like. Yeah.
Months ago, Mark put out this whole video where he detailed all the changes that were going to be happening for 2025 with the Americas announcement. And then at finals, we were doing Hotline League, I think, or maybe it was the day before where I was doing something else. I was on stage, and so I missed this event where they were like embargoing a bunch of media. And from what I could tell, all the info that like Riot released and embargoed everybody on was just the same shit that they had announced. And then the people on Reddit were like, whoa, we've learned so much, and we're reacting to all of it as if it was brand new news. So that was very funny. But yes, I guess the video that I did, multiple people told me that NRG is out and Immortals are out. I think it's very obvious now and the weeks after. And it's so funny to me, by the way, that Riot did not put that into their post, you know, like they're like, by the way, here's a bunch of 2025 stuff, and then they didn't even mention that. So I don't know. I guess that's the big stuff. And then also we had obviously the JoJo stuff come out as well. So
there's one other thing which might affect NA as well, because I don't know whether this slept in net really. So there was some weird APAC news where OS, I don't think it's going to be included in APAC anymore. So that means that because OS has LCS residency, they could just go over to LCS or the Americas or whatever. Well, I guess it would be America's residency now if that carries over. We don't know. But it was very vague, that post. It didn't really have that much info.
They were just like, we're ending OPL and we're going to introduce something new next year. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. LCO. And they're like, we're gonna reintroduce stuff next year, and everybody was just like, oh, end of an era again. So I'm sad for the people that were impacted by that, but
it feels like with a lot of these, they're just like converting some regions into simply tier 2 regions that can interact now with the guest slots instead of like fully supporting them as tier 1s, right? Because that's happening with like LATAM as well. So it feels like globally
it's trying to streamline. It's trying to streamline things really, but there's going to be a lot of implications from this because, and we kind of seen it with LGL and OS because of the whole PCS thing anyway. When you don't have guaranteed entry into Worlds or MSI, you miss out on a ton of sponsor value because they, you know, if you're a dominant team within that region, you can get more money from a sponsor by saying, hey, you are very likely to be seen at the biggest esports events of the year. So yeah, that's a continuing issue for a lot of this. So people who kind of get shunted down to tier 2, we'll see how economically that affects them.
Yeah, and that's why C9 had to unload the roster. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, by the way, just to reconfirm sort of the video that I did, that was a bit of a reaction piece. Jojo's still on the C9, under C9 on the contract database, which Jamada and Nymaera, how familiar are you guys with the drama around the JoJo stuff? I totally understand if you're not. It's not your region.
Yeah, no. I understand what has been reported, and without full details and trying to fill in things in my head, it sounds kind of funny.
Yeah.
But from an outsider's perspective, right? Like there was a lot of discourse as well around how the situation itself was also handled. Which, again, my personal opinion is how does management ever let it happen to the point where they're tallying it and there's no correction happening? It just seems like the most reasonable thing, but then there's other aspects where you start to wonder, well, if it's happening that much and it's management taking note, then you start to get ideas of like maliciousness and things like this, because who allows like anyone in a management position that lets that go on for, what was it, 43 times, I think the number was. It just doesn't really sit right with anyone that has that information and just kind of sits with it for a second. So yeah, it's a pretty funny situation, but also I guess one for C9, which is going to be kind of awkward to handle now publicly if they, once they get around to it.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting, actually, because like in the past, if you had any issues with a player in the offseason, like none of it would ever come out because there was a buyout market, right? So essentially, like you are devaluing your own asset by being like, hey, this player is always late publicly, right? But that market just doesn't exist anymore, which I find interesting.
Also people just don't want to pay the end of contracts as well if they can. Like, I think this is a cynic's paradise where you see someone saying, oh, that's a weighty contract. What can we do to cut the end of that off? That's the cynical point of view, right? And I know that bits of the offseason have been moving really quickly. I've had some whispers of like a lot of EU teams moving very quickly as well. And of course, there's some kind of across the pond kind of back and forth there too, especially the Americas being set up. I'm sure that there'll be some back and forth in terms of, certain players looking for opportunities elsewhere. It wouldn't surprise me if some dominoes have already started falling, but I don't really have that much information. I just heard that things have moved quicker than people expected, but that's what you always hear in off-season. Cynics reign.
Well, and we haven't even referenced the fact that the Berserker announcement came out and he's left C9. And so when you're talking about people moving back and forth between the ocean, I would not be surprised if he ends up in LEC if some opportunity comes up to him. So it's very interesting. But yes, I do agree. I agree with the idea that sort of tracking that information and the way that it was conveyed to the community is a great way to ensure that you have some sort of out for what is probably a fairly expensive contract in a year in which teams are going to continue to pull back on spending. So
I mean, it's the most expensive contract, right? Yes. It was the JoJo one. So
that's the assumption. Yeah. So
but just the way they went about it though, it's maybe not the best analogy, but did you ever have like a really bad housemate or maybe like a partner or something that would keep lists on stuff that you did and then use it at the opportune moment?
They're using it because they need. I mean, they need it. It's like an employer, right? Like you say, a housemate, but it's more like HR keeping a record of stuff so that they can. Okay, we have reason to let you go. And
okay, but will that be a better clip than C9 is an abusive ex?
I mean, what Nymaera is saying that like pretty much like Jojo would show up late and just see a passive aggressive like sticky note on his PC, just like 42, and
I don't know. I don't know. I continue to be somewhat skeptical of all the stuff around.
It's really weird. Yeah.
But I'm happy that eventually
this is the cynic's point of view. Just put the caveat there, I guess.
Sure. Okay, so we have all that stuff, which I think we can take some calls on, and hopefully Jamada and Nymaera will not hate having to speak about LCS stuff. But in addition, we also have Worlds.
I like LCS. I watched a lot of LCS this year. It was like, it's the best time zone for me to watch just before I go to sleep. So I actually watched a fair amount of it.
Oh, you watch LCS, it like I watch YouTube videos to just like have it on as I'm falling asleep. Yeah.
Don't always understand what's going on, but I have a good time.
It's exactly. You're like, a lot of these games I could just start to fall asleep unless Team Liquid's playing, in which you're like, okay, this is too much. I gotta, well, regardless, we can talk about that. But also, Worlds is kicking off in just a short bit. In fact, I guess now's a good time to talk about. I have sponsors for this episode, which are NZXT. We really appreciate their support of Hotline League and coming in for a full year. So it's been great to have them here since June. But additionally, and we'll talk about this more later, myself and Drew are hopping on a plane to Berlin on Saturday.
Oh, sweet.
Yes.
My condolences.
I'll see you there.
Yeah. I will enjoy going to Worlds, even if Berlin is not my favorite city. Regardless, that's made possible by PrizePicks, who's coming in to sponsor my Worlds coverage. So I'll be there. We're doing asset days and the first half of Swiss. So we'll be over there for about 8 days to make a bunch of content. before Swiss kicks off, and then in the beginning of Swiss, which is what we did last year. Then I'll come back. We'll do some content and coverage back here because it just gets harder to stay over in Europe for that long from a cost perspective, and also just like you start to get a lot less games at a certain point in time, and then I'll be going back for finals. So I'm doing back and forth over the Atlantic a little bit, but yeah, PrizePicks coming in to sponsor the World's coverage and all that stuff. So hopefully folks appreciate the fact that we were able to secure a sponsor for World's coverage this year, which is great. So thank you to PrizePicks. We'll talk more about that, and I think I'll have more of an official announcement coming out tomorrow, Wednesday, but I want to share that a little bit in advance with Hotline League viewers. So thanks, everybody. All right, let's get into the calls, shall we? I guess, Cubby, is there anything else that we're missing? I know you're probably already starting to pull folks, but anything else that we're missing from? I do want to preview Worlds and alt planes and stuff, so if people want to talk about that.
Do you care about the World's Anthem at all, or the global power rankings? Those are the two things that gotten some topics.
I mean, I don't know. Oh wait, this is the AWS global power ranking system that they're using?
Yes.
I think we could have, I don't know, Jamada and Nymaera, do you have...
Yeah, I got some views on that. So the traditional sport which I grew up with the most was rugby union, and they have like a world ranking which they use to, at a certain point, basically do the cutoff for top 8, which then affects which world championship group draws are put in, and that's a really good way to seed quite isolated parts of the world, because typically you have Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere teams playing against each other in rugby union. So you'd have the home nations and the Six Nations, and then you have like the rugby championship in the Southern Hemisphere. But then trying to accurately seed those teams can be, has been a very important thing in the past. One of the things which has been a problem in the league, and I'm not saying that this will be used for it, but this potentially paves the way towards it. If you have a global power ranking for league, it potentially gets rid of one of the issues that we've had over time, depending on how accurate, which is having very unbalanced pool 1 and pool 2 kind of group draws and stuff like that, and even like lower down the list, stuff like minor regions, where I guess that'll be less of a problem when we've got Americas and APAC and stuff like that. But I think having a more accurate seeding, a mechanism to do a more accurate seeding potentially in the future does actually excite me a fair amount.
Yeah, I think it sounds like Nymaera can talk to it, so we'll take calls on it if people want to.
I'm such a professional yapper.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
It's always one of those things where whenever we have these kind of more existential questions or more sort of theoretical questions, I never know how much our guests are like, okay, I could mostly just talk about.
No, my story starts in 1996 in
all right,
the
all
city
right.
of Nottingham.
So we'll get those calls going.
Ooh.
That'll be good. It'll be good. But folks,
my only take very quickly on that was that G2 being above T1 was incredibly based. And I will not be convinced otherwise.
We'll find out what the callers.
I mean, the record's better, Jamada. It's stats and logic.
So, but we have that, and then just so everybody knows, there are games that are taking place this week, because I think a lot of people might not know. So if you're on the West Coast, 5 a.m. on Wednesday, I guess 8 a.m. Early morning on the West or East Coast in the U.S. here, and everywhere else, go look it up. But we're gonna have our first match of play-ins. So League of Legends Worlds kicks off this week, even if it sometimes feels like it really starts with Swiss, I guess. All right, Cubby,
I wish I was East Coast for this, man. That'd be a nice wake-up call. Yeah,
I know.
Hey, if you guys want to join and talk with our esteemed international guests this time around,
and also me.
Worlds. We got discord.gg/Travis to join Jamada and also Nymaera, as well as Travis and myself, to talk about Worlds. Just go in there and drop your take at me, at Cubby. If it's pleb topics or subtopics, does not matter. We'll take any and all takes involving everything we've talked about so far. So I'm going to go grab the first caller and we'll go from there.
Off he goes. So first off, thank you to some folks who have subbed. We did not stream last week because we took a break, and that was anytime we take a break off, it is brutal on the sub count, as every streamer will tell you. So thanks to everybody who is streaming. Just a reference, it is the end of September, so you can get discounted subs this month on Twitch, and doing so actually really does help. I think you can pre-purchase. You get 30% off on 6-month subs.
Yep.
So if you think you're going to be a sub for a while. But thanks, everybody. We'll do some shout-outs for those in a second. But first off, we got Saki here. Saki, where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm from California.
California. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So I basically just want to talk about how I think coming into this Worlds, I have the opinion that we will have 2 Western teams qualifying to the quarterfinals, and those teams I think will be G2 or it'll be G2 in either Team Liquid or FlyQuest, just depending on like the form and the matchups that they end up running into. And I guess I could elaborate on that if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So I was watching the like old World Championship stream, and they just kind of replay the old World Championships. Right now they're on 2033, and I was watching Fnatic versus Weibo, and it was the 2-2 matchup. So the winner of this would go to quarterfinals. And I was like watching Fnatic win a game versus Weibo, and then they had a lead in the second game, but then they kind of threw around the Baron. And then like the third game, they just completely get stomped. And then G2 also played versus BOG. They lost 1 and 2 as well. And I just thought like, wow, we had 2 LEC teams that were 1 win away from eliminating 2 LPL seeds and potentially advancing. So what I was, and like, you know, we had the NRG run where they beat G2. So I kind of have this mindset that even though the West will always be an underdog, I really do feel like we have these teams in G2, Team Liquid and Fly, who have really stepped up, and they've brought in players that really grind the game. You know, the introduction of Quad, Lucio really studies the game really hard. Inspired's been great, and we see that same thing with Team Liquid, like CoreJJ, like Impact, APA Yun, they all work really hard. And even though LPL and LCK are like really great regions, they're really scary regions to play against. I do think that with these teams in the great form and with the natural RNG of the Swiss stage, we can see like a repeat of energy, and we could potentially see a lot of upsets that allow more Western teams to qualify to quarterfinals.
Nice. Yeah, I really like this take. I think it does fall a little bit underneath the hopium that we get before every Worlds, but I think it's important to have it every time. And I guess the sort of conversation that we can now have here as a panel is like, on the hopium scale, how far down between hopium and copium, I guess, which direction are we headed here? How unlikely is it that this is going to happen versus how realistic is it this year?
I mean,
you can take the floor if you want. You seem very opinionated almost off rip.
Well, Jamada, I just want to ask you what you feel about, as the certified Weibo hater, what do you feel about this?
No, look, people always gonna point at me about the Weibo thing, because I will never forget what they did.
Hate them.
What they did last year was sacrilege on almost every level of the word. This team frauded their way into Worlds. They frauded their way into Worlds. Completely fluked it, in my opinion. They get all the way to semifinals. Now, granted, they're still an Eastern team. They're still an LPL team. So beating Western teams is still the expectation, regardless of what seed you are. They roll into, it was NRG they rolled into, right? So that's basically a free semis. Sorry, NA and NRG fans. That's a free semis. And then it's like, well, they get to BLG, the team who have effectively trounced them a majority of the year in 2023. And then their brains just activate and they go, wait a minute. And they like the shy regresses about 6 years back. Day. And I still don't understand. And then to beat BLG, I think maybe the only time in a best of 5 the entire year, off the top of my head.
Yeah,
I can't remember
they got
every single
dumpstered by
result.
them in spring. Yeah.
Go into T1 to get 3-0'd. I'm sorry, but we kind of got robbed of a better finals, in my opinion, in many ways. Whether it was BLG JDG or BLG T1, it wouldn't have mattered. BLG, they played poorly on the day, don't get me wrong. Weibo, horrible. This year, though, Weibo are a good team. I can't even, like, even the irrational part of me can't be mad about how Weibo have progressed throughout the year, especially since Tarzan and Breathe have come in. They've looked like a better team through and through, and I can't really hate on it. And I think that people are underrating them partially because of what happened last year. I think maybe there's people that haven't watched LPL throughout this year and they're still kind of thinking, you know, holistically, they're probably still going to be the same Weibo. But guys, they came second in playoffs. The only reason why they're qualifying as the 4th seed is because their spring sucked, so they had to go through the gauntlet.
So I'm gonna read back the take to you, Jamada. It's 2 Western
Yeah.
teams will qualify to quarterfinals: G2, NTL, or Fly.
So I just really wanted him to talk about Weibo.
Yeah, I don't know.
He
Nymaera,
triggered
we were.
me. I'm sorry.
Where
He
that
triggered
was.
me. That's on me.
First take of the
I
night,
have a-
and it's about Western teams, and you get Jamada, you press a button, and he starts going on a Weibo
My
rant.
logic here was that I thought that probably
gotta rev 'em up.
because of the example and the explanation which was put out there, which is again completely valid in terms of
Sure.
like Weibo last year. There were definitely some that team was so cursed last year. I think if you're looking at Western teams versus Eastern teams this year, you don't have a Weibo at that same level of inconsistency to maybe undermine. I'm not saying it's a complete false positive from last year, because I think there were definitely worlds in which that could work through. I think in terms of like, there are 2 ways I have to view this. There's the maths part of it, and then there's the matchup part of it. On the matchup part of it, I still don't think there are Western teams which are massively overdogs versus Eastern teams. I think if a Western team goes up against an Eastern team, you're still going to have a sizable advantage for the Eastern team. Not enough to completely invalidate the matchup, but I still don't think like on any individual matchup that'll happen. There probably will be enough West versus Eastern matchups happening though across the entirety of Swiss stage for there to be Western wins. And just because of the maths of Swiss stage, there are definitely routes to get in towards quarterfinals by not facing Eastern teams in a deciding match. And that's the big thing, really. So I think 1 into quarterfinals is almost guaranteed. It's actually very easy to get 1 Western team at quarterfinals, because you're likely to have Western versus Western for 1 spot. But then the second team, that's where I'm kind of like stalling out a little bit, because I'm trying to think which teams I would genuinely think can get that matchup close enough for me to favor that.
To what you were just saying, that's I think what NRG did last year, right? Didn't NRG lose to T1, and then they didn't, so they like never beat an Eastern team, but they were able to make quarterfinals. I think is like the path that they had.
And they weren't a bad team. Then they weren't a bad team. It's just that was the easiest route through. Whereas you look at like, I don't know, was it Damwon last year that had to go through like 3 mega teams?
KT. Just every like tough team imaginable, basically.
KT only played Eastern teams and played T1 the best. Like, they were actually really good last year.
So I think 1 team definitely. I think TL and FlyQuest are decent teams. I think particularly TL, I was impressed by a lot of this year. Obviously, FlyQuest came out as LCS champions, but like they're not bad teams. It's I'm trying to think which teams would drop out of LCK LPL. I mean, LNG
T1 and
famously
Scout.
last year.
I think that's a very easy answer. And I don't think there's much thought to it, right? Like T1 don't look good, right? Relative to and I won't hear the world's buff. I won't hear the world's buff.
I was literally just about to be like, but it's gonna be worlds, of course.
Look, I won't hear the world's buff like nonsense either. Like, I don't care that the patch looks good for them and this, that. I'll wait
and apparently
to see
not
it to
Weibo
believe
this time,
it.
given the
I'll wait to see it to
terrain.
believe it. Yeah, and I mean, hell, I'll put Weibo as far as maybe making it to semis with a good top 8 draw. And then it's the LNG is just about whether or not they figured out the Scout thing yet, because we haven't got confirmation on that.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, Scout. Last I heard, Scout will be at Worlds, but just based on that anyway, though, just in terms of like teams which, so basically teams which I'm kind of like putting up in terms of these might not make quarterfinals from Eastern regions. There was an interview with Scout last year, which I think is really, really key to tag into, where he basically said that LNG were really bad at adapting to new patches. The meta from Summer through to Worlds is a big change. Like, this is a huge change. If you're looking at the Champions queue and stuff, like mid lane's changed an awful lot. AD carry's potentially changing a lot too. I'm a little bit worried that LNG are going to take a couple of games to get used to it, and I don't know whether they'll have that safety margin in World Swiss.
Do you think the change is good for Scout, though? Like, I think of all the teams and impacts for LPL, I actually think it's not bad for LNG at all.
Scout has a very particular macro impact on his team, where he pushes out lanes and he uses that to systematically destroy towers across the map. So he's been using a lot of AD carries to do that, and if AD carries are less present, that will potentially take a hit. Not that mages can't do that. I think he'll still largely be doing the same thing, but it does change. It's just all that micro stuff in terms of the way that, particularly for LNG, the way that they had to integrate mid-jungle was very, very complicated this year, because they're 2 very different players. If that changes because mid lane's changed, I'm kind of worried that we get back to like, LNG were really, really bad at groups in Ascension. Well, no, Ascension they were good, but like at the start of summer they were ass. They were so bad.
Everyone was kind of bad at the start of summer, though.
No, but LNG were like monumentally bad at that point. So I'm just trying to think. Going back to the original question, can 2 teams make it out of groups? Which 2 teams would drop? Yeah, I could see maybe LNG dropping if they get a bad enough read, and then Maths maybe gets another team through. I think that's an okay take, actually. It's just about which Western teams which then capitalize.
I mean, I think the expectation should be 1, and I can't remember the last time I've said that. Like, this is the most hope I've had since like 2016 for NA, right? Or 2014, where like we were actually good. Obviously, EU's had some better teams with the G2 Fnatic squads, but I think the expectation should be to get one team out. And outside of the years where G2 Fnatic were a thing, I can't remember really saying that for a while.
Yeah.
So you're not on the hopium then? You think?
I'm not on the hopium, but we'll see what happens like with the draws. I just think going in, I'm expecting one because like I don't know if T1 is going to be asked or if they get worlds buffed. You know, like I don't know if LNG is impacted by all this. I think the meta swap could be really good for Damwon Kia. Like if that's Damwon,
like for Showmaker.
Yeah,
Showmaker
like
is gonna revel in this.
Yeah, like I think it's really good for them. But like, if that's not the case, that team is like still kind of sus. Like that could actually be they could be beatable like by G2 TL, you know. So, and Fly as well. I agree with the caller's take though that like these are the 3 teams that I'm looking out for to make it to quarters for sure.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that if you're looking at Western teams to make it out, I think these are the safe bets. Actually, I'm very curious. Are we missing any LEC names that should be up here? Is there a world where LCS is sending 2 teams that we think are capable of doing this? And
you guys have
LEC
hope
is
in
only sending
Fnatic?
one?
Yeah, that's how I feel.
I don't know, man.
Yeah,
Saki's like, no.
look,
You just look at that game. If you look at that, was it the game 1 of the finals when they just went into that hyper late game and they couldn't make a single macro decision right? That disturbed me on a spiritual level. That was not okay.
yeah, I'd prefer not to speak. I think. I think that it's G2, and you know, look, if Fnatic make it, they make it. You know, I'll go put some money down on the lottery. It would be the same level of luck. Hey, if they come in and they look good and the meta somehow suits them, if there's the major shift in humanoid historically a little bit better towards that kind of style of play, I think maybe it could benefit Rezork as well. Moving back to like more skirmish heavy junglers. I mean, I think Rezork is a very versatile player anyway, but I think maybe that as a mid jungle pairing could see Fnatic have a much more stable middle of the map to then try and transition that down to assist Noah and Jun. And as for Oscar, I'm actually quite okay with his performances individually, and I'm usually a pretty big critic of Oscar, but internationally he's internationally he's done a really good job, and I think he's had a good showing.
Until he came up against NA.
Yeah, but we won't talk about that.
Thanks, NA.
Otherwise, yeah, I think the likelihood is for Fnatic is like they go out 2-3 in Swiss. They're 1 series away, but they don't make it. I'll be kind of surprised if they hard crash and burn, but we've seen Fnatic rosters do worse, not necessarily in the Swiss system, so we'll have to kind of see. But yeah, realistically, it's probably G2, TL, Fly.
I'm happy that we're all in agreement that LCS is stronger than LEC going into Worlds.
Smile.
Yeah, it's been a hard.
I mean, is
this
this not the conclusion we've drawn from this conversation?
I mean, the thing is though, if you're comparing top team to top team, if Caps is just like peak Caps, then it doesn't actually matter what else happens. He's probably just makes G2 the best Western team because Caps is that. But like outside of that, yeah, I mean, I'd take TL FlyQuest over the field from LEC right now. I think that they've been way more solid in the way that they approach drafts and their macro particularly.
Yeah,
besides when they're defending their open nexus in very important games.
That's true. I think it's more of a consistency thing for me with Fnatic, because sometimes Fnatic can look great, and they'll very happily contest G2 as like when G2 are playing at peak form, and then other games G2 just look clueless. It seems like they don't really have a solid understanding of what they want to do in an early game. They don't really know how to transition their leads into the mid game, their late game macro decision making. We've seen what they've done with 10k gold leads. It doesn't really need to be explained again, right? I think this team just needs to find a certain level of consistency, and then it can be spoken about. But I'm not going to say that the LCS teams are stronger. We have 2 strong teams that we think could go through. You guys only have 1, or sorry, LEC only has 1. The only reason for Fly is that people don't really know where to gauge Fly from an outside perspective right now because they beat TL in finals. That's my honest to God take. Now, granted, I'm very ignorant to NA, the strength of the teams right now, But from a perspective of a true outsider, like a real casual watcher of the league, it seemed like almost no one was on the side of FlyQuest. Everyone was thinking TO were basically going to just win the series 3-1. Everyone gets a lucky, like,
Crazy considering
shit the bed
expectations
game.
for spring.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. And then, FlyQuest are kind of just the undisputed second team.
Yeah. No, that's accurate. That is
Yeah.
everything you just said is accurate. You will find
Yeah.
people who online will be like, well, if you really watched throughout the split, you would know. But like, 100% that was everyone's take going into finals. So that's accurate. But I think
was
the
like
question
mirror
is,
of spring.
what's that?
It was like the mirror of spring.
Oh, yeah.
Where everyone had FlyQuest
Yeah.
favored and then TL beat them. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
pretty much. It was just a mirror.
Yeah. So I get it, and I do agree that like you don't like at this point in time I still have more confidence in Team Liquid to make it through than FlyQuest because I do feel like if you look at what they've accomplished internationally this year, I think I'd rather look at their performance internationally as sort of the power up going into Worlds here, but we'll see what ends up happening. But I do. It sounds like the sort of assessment on your take here is that it's plausible, Saki.
Yep.
So, anything that you would add or anything you would contest or say here?
I guess for my comments, well, first of all, I appreciate the little LPL talk. Like, I really hate how little I get to watch LPL because of time zones. Like, I can't. I'm sorry, but yeah, appreciated that. And then, there is a lot of hopium coming into this one for sure. Like, I'd be happy if one Western team, even if one Western team makes it, I'd be so happy. And as much as I'm an NA fan, I really do appreciate this. Like, G2 iteration, I love Broken Blade, I love Yike, Caps, Hansama, Mickey X, I love those dudes. And I really want them. I really want to see the kind of magic that we saw at MSI. I really think if we can get that magic back into Worlds, I think they can do great. And then, like, Inspired's a great jungler. Like, he
he's
can
great.
play.
Yeah.
He's not worried about the meta. He can play those 80 junglers if that is what comes back. I think Team Liquid's macro was really impressive. Like, there is a lot of hopium, and like maybe one of these teams might just only beat Western teams doing it. Maybe they'll make an upset or two. They'll make enough upsets to qualify. Whatever it takes, I really look forward to how they perform.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the enthusiasm. Anything that you want to shout out here at the end?
Shout out to FlyQuest and Team Liquid, I guess, because they've been really great LCS teams to watch. And yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
Yep, thank you.
All right. I think as we go,
A lot of hope.
Yeah, no, I mean, but it happens every time, and like I appreciate it. I think there have been years in which I have had a lot less hope, and this year I think I have more. Like actually, compared to last year, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but particularly on the LPL side, like this is probably like last year I thought we had pretty well-rounded teams. This is like the most single team top heavy team like situation that the LPL's ever had. Like BLG, shout out, are so much further. They're this is the year where like there's only been one LPL team, and that's been BLG in terms of contenders for it. And the rest of the three below that have had quite sizable flaws. So if there is a year for a couple of LPL teams, not just one, like typically it was the TN team that would fall apart because mental fortitude issues or whatever. Not always on him, sometimes on teammates as well. Smile. But yeah, I mean, there is a chance that multiple LPL teams like falter a little bit. I still think BLG will be really fantastic and they're a great team, but like it's plausible. I'm not saying it's not trying to put too much weight on it, but it's much more likely compared to last year in my eyes.
I have a lot more faith in at least the LCS side going into this year's Worlds than I did last year's Worlds, because last year like NRG made the crazy run and I was just like I don't know if it's good. Like it was cool, but I was not looking at NRG at any point in time throughout the year being like, oh, this is an internationally competitive team, whereas looking at Team Liquid and maybe now looking at FlyQuest, it feels a lot better. I will say those are the years where things usually go disastrous. Like, as much as I want to hype Team Liquid, if you told me that like they have some
TSM
insane
2016,
yeah, obviously that's one of the biggest ones. But there's been multiple times where there's a ton of hype around a team, and then they go internationally as our first seed and they just collapse. So I don't know what will happen, but I do think that this team seems pretty resilient and that they can probably pick up a lot through practice and that type of thing leading up to their stage matches. So we'll take a quick break really quickly to talk about NZXT. Shout out to NZXT for sponsoring the show. Really appreciate their support of the show. Please use our code whenever you go to check out. You'll be able to find that code specifically in the description of the YouTube or the podcast, wherever you're listening to. We also have it going out into Twitch and YouTube chat right now. Numi will be posting that code, but also a link that you can use to go check out a dedicated page that they've built for us and for Hotline League that showcases the hardware that they provide us with to be able to make the show. Absolutely love using this desktop. Actually, I guess we didn't talk too much about what we've been up to at the beginning of the show, just trying to dive into all these topics, but I was out in Palm Springs last week. I do a quick vacation. Usually I try to do some sort of break before Worlds hits because there's several weeks between LCS finals normally and Worlds. And I went out to, drove out to Palm Springs with some friends and did a shared Airbnb. We did a LAN party, and I brought my NZXT PC with me, and they were oohing and eyeing over how beautiful this thing is. If you haven't taken a look at their cases, their builds, these things are wonderful. They just look absolutely stunning on a desk. And I was sitting there playing WoW all weekend on it, and just had or all week, I guess I should say, and had a really great time doing so. Fantastic systems. Absolutely love my NZXT PC. And you can get yours, again, by going to nzxt.co/Travis. That's com without the M. And using code Travis5. When you do use that link or that code, first off, it will help you, especially the code, but it also makes sure that whenever you do purchase something, they know that that's coming as a result of their sponsorship of the show, which we really appreciate. So thank you so much to NZXT for sponsoring Hotline League. Looking forward to working with them for quite some time to go. So thanks for the sponsorship.
What were you playing at the LAN party that was running so wonderfully on your NZXT computer, Travis?
Dude, I am playing a ton of War Within.
Okay.
This is honestly the most enjoyment I've had with a WoW expansion in so long, and especially the last couple of expansions, I sort of would get up to max level and then stop playing because I just didn't have friends who were like Kobe plays nonstop. That guy is all in on WoW right now. It's all he's doing besides Worlds Prep and Gym. But he's like mythic rating with Tony or Zixlol and
Cop, they're into it,
and all these different people. I hear their voices coming through the wall at all hours of the night. And so he's not interested in doing what I'm doing, which is just like playing a bunch of alts and all that stuff. Actually, I created a World of Warcraft channel in the TGI Discord if people want to go, and I've been trying to catch games with folks and do raids.
I feel like I missed such a cultural phenomenon by I've never played a Warcraft game or World of Warcraft. I've never played any of it. I somehow skipped that, all of it.
Never been a better time, Nymaera. And according to some Reddit threads I've seen, you're going to have some free time. So I think it would not be a bad idea for you to, when the games are on, have WoW open on one screen and just hang it out doing that thing, It's a good time. Playing WoW during Worlds is great.
Well,
I actually don't have words. That was a good one. Jesus, okay,
thank you.
For play.
Thank you.
The returning guest treatment. We're all closer now.
Yeah, Jamada gets this next time.
Yeah, exactly. You get the first episode you come on. It's all friends, and then the second, it's all good.
Go to war.
There's gonna be some angry YouTube comments on your behalf, Nymaera. The reason I do this is I love it when somebody's been being beat down by or being lifted up by the community because of something, and then I bring them on the show and I just
be the rubber band,
you gotta
snap.
just bring them down a little bit, it'll be good. All right, let's get into the next call.
All right, I got a special guest.
Yeah. Oh, really? Off he goes. Yeah, we have a lot of personalities, I guess. We had Saki, who I know is from what I understand from the Twitch chat, seems to be a huge personality within the LCS space. And then we have some more wonderful guests coming up here in a second. Oh, shout out to the one and only Corbin for 30 months, Spud Tugger for 28, Yoser for 23, Pete Monster for 28, Nuclei, thank you so much. We got Yakko Maniac, Sweet Be Good, gifted us up to Nymaera. I'm sure he'll be refunding that after my joke. Kiyun, Mama Tomi, Cruelis, Kanoke, and
gonna give it to Cubby instead. Yeah,
we'll get some more shout outs here in a second. I should check YouTube. Icebreaker Mints, thank you for becoming a member over on YouTube. All right, we have Emily on the show. Emily, where are you calling from?
Culver City, California.
Culver City, California. You're a little quiet. I don't know if you get closer to your mic. I feel like
You say that every time.
because you're
and
quiet every time.
I end up having to deep throat my mic, Travis. It's
Okay.
not great.
Well, we don't need to use that kind of language on the show. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So I wanted to, while Jamada and Nymaera were here, because you never let me talk about LPL topics whenever I'm on the show, keeping me down, per usual. I wanted to ask the guys who they think benefits the most from the upcoming Worlds patch, because I actually think there's a specific answer that I love that could end up like boosting one of the LPL teams specifically.
Biggest thing I look at is mid lane changes for this. I think that you're looking for the teams with like versatile pieces that can deal for like the random odd shots, because there's just random like counter metas which form in a meta. So obviously you're looking at really versatile players like Bin and Wei. They'll do whatever the hell they want. For me, I think Knight is going to have an absolute field day. Like from what I've been seeing in Champions Queue and the majors coming back, Knight is arguably the best Syndra of all time. He loves his AP burst mages. I think it gives him a unique ability to play make. And I think particularly with Knight getting that kind of style of champion back, I think there's even a world where you could argue that no one's going to be a better playmaking mid than him at Worlds. There's a world where you could say that if the right champions fall into meta and you can pick like a lot of his special stuff. So that's the first thing which comes on the table for me. But I don't want to like talk too much unless Jamada, you want to jump in with something. But that's like the first thing which springs to mind.
I think I could maybe argue one, well, not any of your points per se. I think top is probably the team that would potentially look to suffer the most, maybe, with Cream being their mid laner. I like, he's obviously...
He was good on mages and he was a really good Hwei.
Like,
it's just about his other stuff, right?
Yeah, like, historically, his champion pool has been very specific, I think is probably the word I'll choose to go with. And it's not to say that his champion pool is necessarily shallow. It's just that he's never really had to have been pushed in any given meta. So I'm kind of curious with how wide the potential mid lane champion pool is, how Cream specifically individually is going to deal. So
well, I
I'm
mean,
kind of
Akali
worried.
is playable, so maybe we see Cream.
Yeah, so like, yeah, that's it, right? Like, Akali is playable. That's it. Maybe top is just saved.
That's the end of the question, Cream.
Because otherwise, I think there's decent arguments for this meta to probably benefit almost everyone. It's just about how highly you rate that order, right? Like,
I actually also think as well, like Xiaohu's another name on there who like Xiaohu's had a dog year, but he's really, really good at stuff like Syndra too, historically.
Yeah, I don't think this patch is necessarily bad for any team besides probably top esports. I would agree with what you were saying, Al. I'd probably say it's like BLG just on paper seemed like they would probably benefit the most. In my head, after that, it would be Weibo, weirdly, because like Tarzan back on like skirmishes just sounds fun to me in my head. And being able to dictate early gameplay on more aggressive picks as opposed to, you know, air quotes scaling farmers that a majority of the AP jungle pool kind of falls under. It seems like something that would, again, just kind of drive home a very early game centric playstyle on Weibo's part. And they weren't necessarily horrible at translating their early game leads into big, you know, game-ending plays either. So I'll probably say BLG, I think by default, just because Knight is Knight, and the rest kind of speaks for itself. And then Weibo is a relatively close second.
Like I think particularly in the Knight. Oh, sorry, go on. Like particularly with the Knight thing, it's just like I feel like now the meta, if it does bring a lot of the AP burst things back, if we get to see Knight versus Chovy again, we'll see Knight versus Chovy in a meta which is much better for Knight, and I actually feel like that's so important for like the history of this era of League, which I'm like so excited for. But yeah, go on.
No, I was actually gonna say I think I don't know if you remember what people were saying about Gen.G post MSI World win, where people were like, "Oh, Gen.G were already in a great meta for them, and then they got further boosted by the way the meta shifted at the beginning of summer as well." I actually think there's a potential for that to kind of happen with BLG on this patch. Like, Cubby can attest, BLG was the team that I was thinking would actually benefit
also
the most.
Jack's bust for Bin.
And it's not, it's not just because of Knight. Like, you guys already covered the Knight stuff, but when I think of Wei as a jungler as well, and I think of him when he was at his best on RNG, I do think of him as more of a Viego player or more of a facilitator. I think Viego is actually going to be massive at this World, so we're looking at it potentially being a really, really high prio pick. The thing with Cream, I'm actually curious because I think the jury's still out. I do think he can be really good on melee mids. So if Yone becomes super hotly contested and then Akali Silas, I think he could be all right. But I actually think BLG already are, as you two have already covered, by far and away the best LPL team going into this tournament. And I think they also have a chance that they highly benefit from a lot of picks that are going to be super highly contested. Even if the bot lane goes back to the like hyper scaling with like potentially things like Jinx entering, I think no one played Jinx comps better than BLG
For sure,
at MSI last year. So Elk is super familiar with that as well.
Except for JDG. Smile.
Rip ruler.
Yeah.
Another
Oh man!
thing
Oh, and Jace is back too for Night as well.
I will say actually,
yeah.
Jace is. So I actually think Jace benefits pretty much any LPL team. That is actually a really important point because I think Jace is like the one mid lane champion which LPL plays just definitively better than LCK. I think maybe BDD is the best mid lane Jace in LCK, and obviously he's not even here. Zach is obviously pretty. Well, he's pretty good at most like random like mechanical champions, but I think LPL Jaces are so incredibly talented at that. Most of 2023, LPL Jaces ruled everything. So with mages being back, AD carries kind of being shunted out a little bit. Jace does better into mages, has better lane matchups. Even if he loses slightly, he can lose gracefully and be useful. That's definitely a really good point too. Just back to the Cream thing, one other thing which I just remembered on that too. He did get a little bit dumpstered individually by most of the mids he played in playoffs. I mean, there was the LNG series where he did better versus Scout, but even then, Scout, I think over the course of summer, has actually had a really good matchup into Cream. I really think Cream is a very talented player, but I think when it came to the very high pressure best of fives, there was still something left to be desired there. And now he doesn't even have Tristana, which was like his X Factor win everything pick for a lot of summer, and then obviously, you know, back at MSI and beyond that too. So I have some worries there. Cream is a real big like black box for me. I actually don't know how he's going to turn up at Worlds. There's potentially some big things there, but there are some worries there too. Honestly, I think this is going to be a really fun like meta shift up. I think that like this could be genuinely tectonic shifts with all the teams.
Yeah. I know a lot of what we're talking about with the meta is kind of built around Syndra. I don't know about you guys. Like I haven't been able to tune into all the Worlds CQ just because I have I had the Americas tournament going on.
Worry. I saw Aja solo kill Bwipo like 3 times in one game. That's
nice. Okay, that's good.
Well, it sounds in contrast to some of the things Bwipo's been saying recently, so it's kind of strange.
I think that I'd be surprised if by the end of the tournament, like Syndra is getting all the hype that she is now. I know the Storm Surge change is big, but like I can't see a world where like with all the ganking junglers that I expect, like the really fast-paced junglers that I expect to be in the meta. Where
also Jarvan hard counters Syndra.
Yeah,
so that
exactly. Exactly. Like there are some things where a lot of the game is just going to come down to like having a flashless mid. Or a flashless carry, or like a carry where like you have to use flash to get out of certain things, and that's your only spell to do it.
When you had Corki Lucian, you didn't have to worry about that. Now you do.
Yeah, like it's really tough to play around that. And I can see teams, like some teams throughout the tournament, maybe just dropping the pick or just banning it to not deal with it if it does end up being that strong. I don't know. I feel like the hype against it, like around Syndra, is kind of weird to me.
So I think it's just more like AP burst mages are really good because Storm Surge, Shadow Flame, and a bunch of other items are just super cracked right now, while a lot of AD carries and their items got nerfed. So mages, like we've complained about mage items, and as I speak as a mage player as well, we've complained about these items for a goddamn long time. So now I think Nico's playable, I think Syndra's very playable, I think Orianna's very playable. There's also a full Magic Pen Seraphine build, which is really good right now, which could randomly crop up in different areas. We're seeing some like random brand bot lanes too, because
I've seen the brand
lane in general. Brandon lane in general actually is just very good.
Basically, when I think of, I mean, the Syndra thing, maybe I worded that poorly in terms of how often I brought up that champion. Playmaking AP burst mids are back. And I think that there's enough of them with good enough drafts where, like, if you were a playmaking AP burst mid, you're in such a good spot. This is actually closer to, like, I don't know, MSI 23 meta, I guess, at that point then. When you think of, like, Ari, Annie probably is okay too right now. There's Syndra hanging around, Akali.
Yeah.
So all of these champions around there, I'm just thinking, yeah, if you're a playmaking AP burst mid, I saw APA have like a really good Nico game in Champions Queue.
That's what I wanted to bring up actually.
He's a good.
I really want to know what people are going to do with Nico, because off the top of my head,
Knight's
there
one
was
of the best
that one
of that ever.
there was that one pass when she was really, really strong where she did get nerfed fairly heavily. But with the mage items being the way that they are, she still basically provides the exact same thing, like even post nerfs. And like you said, there's a lot of players, a lot of our mid laners, really good, really good Nico players. And the mage items are cheap. They all provide
Also,
the stats she
Tenacity
wants.
was nerfed too. Tenacity was nerfed
And
too, which
Tenacity
is
is nerfed.
insane.
Like,
Yeah.
I think is a perfect storm of different changes to see Nico come back.
Lissandra, TF, Rise are also really good too. There's like a bunch of picks
Oh,
in there.
Rise is also
Rise TF could get
exceptionally
played.
strong.
Yeah.
Rise is exceptionally strong.
That's what I'm curious about. I think TF might be playable, like especially if all these immobile mids get played, like just playing TF and playing through mid, and then you have side lane options later. Could be an answer that some teams have. Yeah.
The
Hey,
mages are strong, guys.
Emily, since you
Well, and-
forced LPL discussion onto the show, let me turn the question around on you. How will the meta changes impact the LCS teams?
Ooh, so one thing that you didn't talk about with the first caller that I thought was interesting that should be touched upon, and you're gonna hate the word that I'm about to say, but it's lane swaps and the potential eradication of them.
God. Yeah.
Because
they're
we
gone.
are going into as much as I do like the meta that's going into Worlds, or what I think is going to be the Worlds meta, and as much as I do think it's going to be great for LPL teams specifically because of everything we talked about, plus LPL junglers overall are typically much more comfortable in a meta where they are playing for their lanes through very creative pathing rather than the inverse of their lanes playing through them. That's not across the board, but like holistically as a region when I think of the LPL.
Yeah,
I think
drop
of that.
camp, get a gank,
And
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that at this World as well with the jungle and mid shifts. However, with LCS teams, I think the big question mark for me is our two best teams. In particular, a lot of the things that Team Liquid were doing with lane swaps were incredibly creative. And it is what made them one of the best macro teams, because it wasn't just, oh, we are trying to avoid XYZ matchup. It was, oh, we're funneling golden resources specifically into these people to set up certain dives or stop certain dives. Or I think the best example of this was when they had the lane swap in their first series against FlyQuest in game 5, where Lilia is actually starting on her weak side, and it ends up, because TL knew that lane swap was happening and because of the way they moved around with that swap, she ended up getting so far ahead in that matchup. And you could actually see that they wanted it in game 4 and FlyQuest called it, which was actually one of the big reasons why FlyQuest ended up doing so well in that early games, because they matched the swap. Anyway, my point is our two best teams, or macro teams, have been really, really good at lane swaps, and I think it's been a huge part of their success. I'm not saying they're only good at lane swaps, but I do think that was something that could have put them ahead, especially regarding TL against teams, because I think they were better than a lot of.
Do you think that would have
Eastern
X
teams
factored
at lane
against like
swap.
Eastern teams potentially?
Yeah, I think it could have, and I think they don't have that anymore, right? And
So you're
I also
saying
think
it's
a lot
Jover.
of things. Well, I also think the other thing to keep in mind that I find kind of interesting about this World is that because it's in Europe, the Western teams are all boot camping in Europe, and the Eastern teams are presumably not going to leave until they absolutely have to, right? So the LPL and LCK teams are not going to come into Europe until later.
Yeah, we might have
true.
two
None of them.
metas. Historically, it's bad.
They will have their own scrim bubble, where we will have our own scrim bubble with LCS teams. So I think that's also something just to watch out for that could be potentially
And
interesting.
which region had to adapt to the new patches faster this year?
True.
Hey, there was
Right,
one
Emily?
patch where
That's what
LPL
you're
played by
getting
a
at here,
patch
right? Is
quicker than
that
LCS. There was one
the
patch.
West will have a better situation because the LCS teams had to learn the meta faster.
I'll say the one team that I think, interestingly enough, and I know they are the worst team that LCS is sending, but the team that I would say benefits the most from the meta shift is actually 100 Thieves. I think River is going to be phenomenal in a jungle meta like this.
Best
where he'll be
Jarvan
able
in
to
NA.
do so much more to control the early game of 100 Thieves. I think Sniper is going to be so much more comfortable when he's not getting swapped on, even though he did improve somewhat in his reaction to it. It was obvious that he was never comfortable in that position, and it was a pretty big weakness of theirs, especially when he's, say, not catching side lanes mid-game and instead grouping with the team repeatedly as Jax. So I think going into this, it's actually interesting when I look at 100 Thieves specifically, because I think they could benefit from the meta shift a lot. Not that FlyQuest and TL won't, but when I'm looking at like a potential, oh, this team is really, really going to be glad that this meta came around, I actually think 100 Thieves probably are pretty psyched that they get to deal with this as opposed to farming AP jungle,
Yeah.
AP mid.
I'm torn about FlyQuest on that because like I think that this is actually really nice for quad, but Inspired being on the like in that past meta and him on AP champs was really good. So I'm really curious to see how they respond.
So all in on 100 Thieves is what you're saying, Emily.
Yeah.
No, I still think they have a lot of problems, but I think they are really happy with the meta shifts.
Okay.
Where I think FlyQuest and TL are both better teams than 100 Thieves still. I do think that this thing they had with lane swaps, in particular TL, like I thought teams from around the world should have been studying what TL were doing in some of their lane swaps. It was incredibly clever. But yeah, that's like a thing they had in their arsenal that like they presumably no longer have because of the patch changes.
So if you had been here when Saki was talking about their
I would have been
hopes,
so depressing. Yeah, I'm so
you
sorry.
would have just completely demolished that caller.
I believe in maths. I think there's a mathematical chance just by not facing Eastern Seas.
Yeah. I mean, there's always Swiss stage like buffoonery, right? Where you just get the way you end up
Like,
getting matched up. Yeah.
The way I put this is like, there probably will be at least a Western team in quarters, but I wouldn't rank a Western team in top 8. It's like there will probably be an overperforming Western team. I think
I can see
that. Or like it's closer towards that. Maybe some of them sneak in towards that, but like the rankings would make it seem like it would be kind of questionable as to whether a Western team can make it into top 8. The maths would make it quite likely.
I think that we're gonna get into the tournament. And it's gonna be pretty clear that there's at least one Western team in top 8. I just like part of that is assuming that all 8 teams coming from the Eastern regions like are on point, right? And that's something where like I'm really curious to see when we dive in. Like, is this better for D plus in this meta? Because I think it should be for Showmaker. Like, does T1 get the world's buff or not? Because if not, like they were looking pretty poor. So I think that like we could get into the tournament and it could be like, wow, TL and G2 are playing really good maps early on. Like, where do we rank them now, right? I don't know. Like, would I put them over people at the moment? I mean, I don't know. I mean, like
PSG Talon instead.
Yeah, again, T1's like current form. Like, I mean, maybe I can say that G2 or TL like have a shot, but I mean, I also think that T1's gonna be better at this tournament than what we saw in LCK.
The meta is so huge for them, but that's a different topic. Yeah.
All right, Emily. Anything that you want to shout out here at the end?
Shout out. I don't really have any shout outs. I guess I do a show with Kelsey that we're doing tomorrow. We're doing our play-in preview at
the final season.
Making the rounds. Is it the final season?
I mean, Kelsey's post made it sound like she's like, "Fuck League of Legends, I'm out, bitches." I think that was a direct quote from the
really?
post.
That's how you read it? Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
That's news to me, but I didn't realize you were Kelsey Moser's translator.
Yeah, well, you listen. You know, you got to read between the lines with Kelsey Moser. She says she hides a lot of stuff.
Work in another League of Legends role anyway?
No. She's running
esports director.
Yeah, she's an esports director. Okay. So it's not. So League will be part of her role,
so
but she did say like it feels
League possible. Just esports director. That famous non-esport League of Legends.
She said that it feels like the end of an era.
Right.
Yeah.
She wrote at the end, "It isn't goodbye, but definitely feels like a very different direction for me after I devoted almost all of my time to one game for 10 years. I'll be seeing you around except for on Making the Rounds, which will be finishing its run at the end of this next month."
Yeah.
That does sound like a goodbye.
I'm just kidding. She
Maybe
didn't
we're
write that
dead.
last part. This is a little bit of
God
little-
damn it, Travis.
a little bit of a scam on my part.
Oh my god. All right. I'm trying to think of what else is going on in my life. I don't know. Yeah, watch Worlds. Bruins, if you could please sign Jeremy Swayman, that'd be great. And yeah,
Nice.
that's about it.
Thanks so much, Emily, for the call, and catch you next time.
See y'all.
Can I just say
Alright.
how much of a pleasure it is to have LPL talks with people which I don't normally talk to LPL about? It soothes my soul.
That know about LPL like intimately.
Hey, we can
actually
talk
have
about
good
it.
Takes.
So there's all these different arenas all over China, and the teams have them, right? And then
Mhm.
they travel to go face each other in these, and
Yep.
and a lot of these teams go. Oh, it's a really big deal in China. And when you win Worlds, the posters go up in the ramen shops, from what I understand. And because that's what Raz said in a documentary I produced about this. And
Overwatch League could never, by the way, with the arenas.
anyway, so we're going to talk about a sponsor. We're going to do a sponsor break right now. PrizePicks. Really excited for PrizePicks. So here's what's really cool, folks. You were just hearing all this meta conversation, all this kind of stuff. Well, guess what? Normally, there's a pretty long break between the time we do Hotline League and the time LCS starts on a Saturday. And so the plays are not available on PrizePicks. But for now, because we have just a couple days until World starts off, right now you can go decide. After hearing everything you just heard, do you all think Quid is going to get over 9 kills in the first 2 games against R7 on Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific? Do you think he's going to get more? Or do you think he's going to get less? How about
War. Go on A.
How about Levi? Do you think Levi is going to get less or more than 5 kills in his match on Thursday at 5 a.m.? These are the questions that you will ask yourself as you load up PrizePicks by clicking my link, signing up with my name, and then making your first time deposit. Doing so really helps support what we're doing over here. But yeah, it's really fun. You can go take a look at these picks right now as you're listening to the show, literally right now. If you could do so responsibly, if it is available in your area, maybe consider giving PrizePicks a try. It is a really fun thing for a lot of people to sort of engage with the game in a different way. And again, that's as simple as it is. You're literally picking less or more on 2 picks. Elioya getting more or less than 5.5 kills in the first 2 maps on Wednesday at 5 a.m. Go make your lineup, make your decision on what you want to play, and then roll it forward. It's gonna be fun.
Also, there are pretty much offering a free square during NFL season if you take Caleb Williams more passing yards, as it's 0.5 yards. And I gotta say, my last 2 slips involving Caleb Williams, they both did convert, so that's big.
Congratulations.
This past week I had Caleb Williams over a half pass yard, Cole Kmet over 25.5 receiving yards, then George Pickens over 50.5 receiving yards. And the week prior, I had Caleb Williams over a half yard, and then Lamar Jackson over 218 yards. And those both hit. So
it's American football for our guests who are on the show right now. And
yes.
trying to understand what that is.
Oh, yes. Hand egg, but not the rugby kind.
Yeah.
But to Cubby's point, if you are making a pick over on the League of Legends board over at PrizePicks, just head on over to NFL. I have no idea what Cubby's talking about when it comes to this stuff, but I do know that you can just add the Caleb Williams square where it says more and it says half a pass yard, and it's just like a free square. So you get like a bonus. It's if you're trying to, I'm trying to figure out how to best describe this within League of Legends terms, but I can't. So you'll pick the 2 League of Legends players on more or less, and then you'll add in that NFL square, and you can get a bit of a bonus if you win all 3, and you're essentially guaranteed to win the Caleb Williams square, is the way that kind of promotion stuff works. So yeah, you can mix and match League of Legends with other stuff.
It's like betting on Ruler getting 1 CS. You know?
Yes.
That's pretty much it.
Yes.
No, he's playing center. No.
Yeah.
Oh no, he's not at Worlds. Oh no. Okay. Yeah.
Either way, thanks so much to PrizePicks for sponsoring the show. Please use the link to sign up for it. I will, as part of their sponsorship of our Worlds coverage, it won't just be on Hotline League that we'll be doing this, but we also have some Discord hangouts that I'll be doing after or before the matches once I get back in the States. So, and with that, we'll be talking about the games, maybe giving some predictions, and then talking about some PrizePick stuff if people want to get in on that. So, stay tuned. That'll probably be about a week and a half from now when I'm back from Europe, which is a crazy statement for me to say as I think about what that means. But yeah, go stay tuned for that. But thank you to PrizePicks for sponsoring the show. All right, done with sponsorship stuff for the rest of the show. So we're in to the next call. If Cubby wants to go grab them. We got 504 Caesar with the 1999 super chat over on YouTube. Jeremy with the $10 super chat. Thank you so much to both of you. And Bob and George, who gifted a membership over on YouTube. Always really nice. And the I guess notable individual train continues with Mehir joining the show. Mehir, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from an undisclosed location in Los Angeles, California.
Okay. I mean, I think you're disclosing the location whenever you say Los Angeles, California.
Honestly, yeah. I guess my secret's out.
All right. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So I was thinking about this because after Impact won MVP, I think there's been a lot of conversation about how the way he approaches improvement and preparation, and how players like him and CoreJJ are considered anomalies or outliers, when in reality, I feel like the attitudes they've adopted over time, which have largely led to their consistency, should be more common than they are. But I guess my take, if I had to boil it down, is, the way Impact and CoreJJ approach the game itself should be more common than it is, because I feel like with NA, there's talent, but the difference between these ultra successful teams and the teams that struggle perennially is typically an attitude difference. So yeah, that's my take.
What when you talk about the way they approach the game or sort of this conversation, can you expand a little bit, especially if we're getting perhaps some callers who viewers who are not normally tuned into LCS conversations?
Yeah, so I think both Impact and CoreJJ, for example, I just checked the ladder, and CoreJJ I believe was rank 11 if I remember correctly, and Impact always maintains high challenger. These guys are amongst some of the most they have some of the most games played. They value solo queue a lot, and I mean, I'm sure whenever you've interviewed them, there's a stark difference in attitude whenever you talk to them versus say a younger player who might not be as dedicated, so to speak. I remember I asked Impact about how he approached a certain play in game. It was in regards to a dive, and the level of depth he reached, I haven't heard a younger player reach quite yet. So it's more so the way they approach solo queue and the way they approach the game itself. I think for a while CoreJJ actually stagnated, and then I think he unlocked himself in spring playoffs. But I do think that they both have a better mind for the game, and the way they speak publicly about the way they play or the way they approach the game is very structurally sound. I think they both whenever they play the game, they know what they want to do. They know how to approach multiple scenarios. They're both very consistent players as well. So yeah.
Well, go ahead.
No, I that's pretty much all I had.
I was gonna say, if your take is that you wish that we had more players like CoreJJ and Impact in the league, I definitely agree with you. I think that that is a really great thing that they bring to the league. And obviously I did a video a short time ago talking about how lucky we are to have them in the LCS, because I think they stand out not just regionally but also globally. And so I 100% agree with you. In terms of NA players don't have a consistent mindset, I don't know, Cubby, do you want to? I know we've been tossing over to Jamada and Nymaera for a while, but what do you think?
I mean, the best thing that you can ever ask for in any sport is longevity. Just have people that are around, whether it's on the same team or in the same league or just here for a long time. It's going to give people more chances to latch onto you, just to be a fan, and then B also just gives familiar faces for all fans to see in the league. I think the fact that Core and Impact have been performing at the level they have throughout their career is amazing, and I really wish that we had more players that we're playing since day one LCS, or even beforehand, if you look at a player like Impact, right? I also think it's cool though that these types of players, having them stay in the league like this, it gives other players a chance to get built up by them and also get built up by having to go against them, which is great. Like one of the cool things that I think exists right now in the league is that Chovy and Knight are, two of the best players that we have in the game. And in their respective regions, they still have to get through Faker and Xiaohu, who were the ones that were hoisting the majority of the international tournaments or trophies,
Scout as well. He's been around
beforehand. Yeah, like the fact that you have the new greats toppling the old ones is something that any sport would wish for. So I think obviously I want more impacts and cores, and they're successful because of a lot of reasons. And like Mehir, obviously you get to talk to these guys a lot, seeing that difference in approach that they have. It's one of the many reasons why they are able to stick around for a long time, because this is a very competitive space.
Yeah, and I think that also, both of these players are known to like invest a lot in like the NA scenes. Like for example, like QuarterJJ carries like off-season content. I don't know if he has been doing it as much, but I remember when he first came over, he had these in-houses. Like they were the QuarterJJ in-houses, not like the LCS in-houses. They were the QuarterJJ in-houses. So these guys are like invested so much into the league, and I can't help but feel like it has gone like taken for granted for a long time. I do think the attitude in the LCS has improved a lot, specifically this split, but I'd say over the course of this year. But I think for the longest time, like we've kind of minimized their importance, and we've also treated them as like outliers, when in reality, like that should be the standard. Like, I mean, Cubby and I have talked about other sports. Like I'm a huge NFL fan. Like NFL players like give their physical all, like regardless of how good you are. But in NA, there's like a pretty large gap in like players who are grinding their asses off, and then players who like can queue into me and solo queue.
I think the take that should be the mindset. I completely agree with that. Then you have to start examining like, well, okay, what creates these mindsets? Where do the players come from, and what traits are distilled into them? If you look at the amount of turnover and the way that scouting is done across the entire globe, because that kind of filters through the whole system. Typically, you look at a load of teams which typically go for younger players which are unproven because they want to just kind of see if they can find a diamond in the rough, rather than kind of like developing someone over and over like that, and trying to get someone through right the way from grassroots and stuff like that to distill those right kind of mindset stuff is a very rare thing to do. Typically, people have already got their mindsets in place when you first discover them. So it's about, what made that in the first place. A lot of pro gamers come from being the best player in their friendship group, and then they are the best player in their school, and then maybe the best player like outside of that too, and they start climbing the way up at that point. And it's just by being really good just on a mechanical level. And that can very much turn into an ego, and it can very much turn into like, well, no one's been better than me up until XYZ. That's definitely been a problem with some players in Europe, actually, where the only time where they feel like their players have been better than me is like at top end of LEC, or even going into internationals or something like that. And that really affects mindset. So going back to the initial take in terms of that should be the mindset, in terms of like being quite humble, actually quite down to earth, and saying, well, look, I will work as much as I need to. I will enjoy the grind as well. That was one of the hugest things coming out of the finals hype stuff, in terms of CoreJJ and Impact saying like, oh, will I ever quit? No, this is the best thing ever. That is cool. Absolutely perfect. That is exactly the way that you should approach this, because if you're going to be in esports, it's a lifestyle. If you're putting this much time into it, dedicating this much of your life to it, it is a lifestyle thing. I think that is probably what you're looking to get out of top tier players that can be around for a very long time. But you have to look at the situations where people even start off on the very first rung of the ladder, and getting that mindset in, I actually don't know whether you can really control that mindset once you've kind of picked people up to that, or rather it's a much harder time distilling those kind of traits into people who've already come through solo queue and a bunch of other kind of amateur experiences.
I think this stuff. Sorry to cut you here, because do you want to reply to Nymaera quickly?
No, I was gonna say like really quickly. I do think like with the changes happening to Americas, cutting it down to 6 NA slots plus 1 LLA plus an invite slot, I think that kind of attitude will also not slide as much as it has historically. Like when we're in 10-team LCS,
because
like you can't convince
slots because it's been distilled down more.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think with coming into this season, there actually might be a surplus of talent in comparison to slots. Like we might have some pretty decent players not being able to play. So I think it will naturally fix itself with the changes.
I think that is you have more faith in the ability for teams to hire the correct
Massing's unsustainable.
Massing's
unsustainable, so players just go.
I just want to stamp on this take overall that a lot of what you're speaking about realistically comes from the top down, not from the bottom up. Players don't often come into team environments with a great amount of discipline when it comes to practice culture or just their culture in general. I think that's just a fact. When you have these players that haven't really interacted in these kind of environments before, I think the only time I've had an exception to this rule is if I've worked with a player or I've spoken with a player and they happen to have actual real life sports like experience. That's the only exception to that rule I've ever found.
Oh, Advian was too, because Advian was actually training to be a lawyer before he became a pro. Like he was like a real exception too.
Yeah. So to me, it's a lot more to do with management, to do with the coaches, to do with actually getting people or getting players rather to shift mindset once they come in. Because I think people like Impact and CoreJJ, they have so much experience, and realistically, you will claim them now as NA talent, sure, right? But they were originally imports, and I think they brought over a lot of their culture in terms of practice and their ideology towards how things need to be, and kept a lot of that and tried to maybe even introduced a lot of players probably around them to that way of playing and that way of practicing. But I think when you don't have those individuals coming in, then the onus needs to be a lot more on the people that are actually in the positions who are teaching these players. And to me, I think that always takes precedent over players themselves needing to find that individual mindset themselves. But that's just also the ex-coach in me speaking. I don't think that the onus necessarily needs to be on players. Like, players will always put in the perceived like minimum. Most of them, like 9 out of 10 players, they'll always put in the required amount of solo queue, etc. Everything else, I think, when you're talking about new players, I think a lot of the initial discipline aspects and that kind of attitude to practice and things, that is something that should predominantly be more taught through, again, the people above them, the coaches and management.
So I guess like not like a rebuttal, but like I guess like my question to you then is because I feel like we exist in a space where coaching is like, I don't know if undervalue is the right word, but it's really hard to quantify the impact of a coach. So would you then say like that is an aspect of coaching that gets overlooked, is like pushing your players to have better habits,
Yeah.
etc.?
Or managing as well. This isn't always on coaches.
Yeah, but also I think, and this is not an uncommon take amongst anyone who's either worked as a coach or has half a clue. Half the coaches on both sides of the pond, by the way, in the West at least, are paycheck stealing very, 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 very hard. And I think a lot of people on the inside and on the outside don't actually understand what the role of any given coach is to be, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, because just specifically on that, because like I think a really good example of this is someone like Roman for G2. He's general manager. He's not.
You're
coach,
saying he's a
but,
paycheck stealer.
No. In terms of like
absolutely.
understanding what the role is, because he
Yes.
he gave up drinking because he'd drink in a kind of like a social environment. He decided, actually, I don't want to ever see being drinking around my players, because I am a role model within young men's lives in esports like this, and particularly when you're in developmental stuff, at high level stuff, it can be a little bit different depending on the age of the players that you've got in there. You need to really be cultivating a good environment for that. Sometimes it can be a bit overdone. Every team environment will be very, very different for that, but yeah, coaches and managers are also a pretty big pillar of young people's lives when they get into esports environments too, and that is a really overlooked thing, particularly if people haven't gone to high school because they've dropped out early to go into esports. If they've never been in a professional working environment, or they've never been to university or something like that, and they've never actually had structured places where you actually have to be dependent on yourself and you have to be responsible for yourself, because all you've been good at is the best player in your friendship group of video games, and that's just spiraled out of control. You've never had that responsibility put on yourself, and that really does go into your mindset.
No, I actually really appreciate that insight, because I'm not someone who knows the EU scene that much in depth, so it's actually like a pretty admirable
I will say Roman is also like the forget gold standard. He is the platinum standard. Like,
dude's a legend. Yeah,
this guy, if he retires, there will never be another Roman as far as management is concerned, and how he handles his team, and him and the entire coaching staff on G2 I think are very special. But that's kind of the point. There's not even really many coaching staffs Europe, or I'm a bit more ignorant on the NA side, so I forgive if there are some very strong general managers and such out there. I think Papa Smithy is probably a very good example of someone who's very forward and very open about a lot of the processes over at FlyQuest, as an example.
But he used to work as like a counselor in schools, didn't he, for a while? So he's very like aware of that.
Yeah, yeah, sure. If that's what he did, then it explains a lot as to why he's, at least to me, he seems pretty bloody good at his job. So yeah, like to me, I think a lot of it is top down, and I think to me, again, as an ex-coach, I look at it more from boots on the ground. I can kind of see, again, a lot of people don't understand inside and outside what the role of any given coach is. I think head coach as well. The role of head coach, I think, is one of the most misunderstood roles, maybe out of any role really inside of esports. I think it's a very long conversation, so I don't want to get into it right here, right now.
I think it's gotten better.
I definitely think it's gotten better in North America.
I do think it's gotten. I do think it's gotten better. But yeah, again, to me, there are a lot of qualities that lend to being a head coach or a strategic coach or an analyst, and people don't really understand how these roles are supposed to interact with each other, how these roles are supposed to interact with players, how these individuals on a staff will then train good habits and good discipline and good attitudes to practice and such. And I think the moment that we start to have more consistently strong, and from the outside perspective, maybe people who have worked in these kind of settings can visibly see that there's more coaching staffs that probably have good, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like good faith with those kind of individuals, then there aren't. Then I think, yeah, the overall like players and their shifting attitude, you will see it in how they talk about the game, outside of the game. Well, just from having conversations like that.
And just to wrap up the topic and kind of bring it full circle, we were talking about Impact and Core, and I have been, especially in the last couple of months, like a huge cheerleader for Spawn as the coach of that team, because I think he's been really, really great and has been instrumental to sort of taking the philosophy and dedication that I know Core and Impact have and making it a team-wide philosophy, which is, I think, part of the reason why Team Liquid has had so much success. And I think I memed on them a lot in whenever, I think last year was the year where they were like, yeah, we're just going to work harder than everybody. And I think that that did not go over as well. But then this year in particular, I think that they have done a really good job of sort of standing up for who they are and what they are. And I think a huge part of that has been Spawn coming in and making sure that team really lives by that philosophy. So yeah, I think coaching, I really like what you talk about, Jamada, because I think a lot of that is like, what is the team culture and what's permitted and what isn't permitted, and how many times do you let somebody be late? All right, Mehir, anything you want to shout out here at the end?
Shout out all the beautiful people watching. Also, shout out to the sponsors, and also free Don Jake.
Who? Never heard of him.
Apparently he's my lawyer now, according to Twitch chat. So I don't know. Speak to my lawyer.
Yeah, I don't know. He earlier was in the Discord, begging, pleading on his knees for a Hotline League guest role because he made just the teensiest appearance on an episode of Hotline League a while ago, and he was just like, "This is all I need. It's so much for me." I don't know. It's just it's sad to see what what drives some people to pursue fame. All right, I think we've got time for 2 more callers or so. Looks like that's what we've got in the waiting room. So you want to go grab them for us? Okay. Thank you to Keon. Hopefully I got that right. Keon wrote, "Here's a sub for your World's Tour. My mom's Honda recently broke down, so we were looking to buy a new car. She was looking Toyota CHR, and I was like, yuck, do you know Kia sponsors Travis Gafford and you are buying a Toyota? I then took the initiative to look for a Kia, and it is great to say that we are picking up our brand new Kia Sportage tomorrow." Thank you, Keon, for that. If you have some way of tweeting it or sharing that in another way, I would love to be able to put that out there. Kia joined us for Summer Split, so you won't see them on this show for our Worlds coverage, but hoping to do some more stuff with them next year. So I'd love to see that. Lazerfruit is here. Lazerfruit, where are you calling from?
Ontario, Canada.
Ontario, Canada. Do you want to share what you want to talk about on the show?
Yeah, so I think Mad Lions will lose to both PCS seeds, and they won't make Swiss stage.
Ooh.
Okay.
That's not a hot take.
Not a hot take.
I love the difference in reaction from Nymaera and Jamada, where Nymaera just gets a giant grin and Jamada just looks to the ground and is like, "What a waste of my time."
That's not a hot take at all. No. Look,
PSG Talon's the best team.
Wait,
in
let's
I was gonna
Lazerfruit.
use that. That was gonna be my hot take. God,
Lazerfruit, expand.
It's not a hot take.
Expand on this, Lazerfruit, please.
So I think they will get 3-0'd by PSG in the second round, and they will mental boom, and they won't win their
very
next
impressive
series.
in best of threes, actually.
That's how much
It's
they're
only
gonna
be-
lose.
It's only best of threes in playing.
They're gonna
Oh,
get
it's
3-0'd.
They'll get
in a-
2-0'd. Same shit.
They're gonna get 3-0'd at a best of 3 Nymaera. That's how humiliating it's gonna be. PSG's gonna be like, oh no, we'll give you the one
Gonna
more.
play one game for content.
Yeah, exactly.
You know. Yeah.
I'm just gonna flatly say this. That's not a hot take for one. I think
Yeah.
you're probably bang on the money. The only way around this is if Mad Lions have figured out that they just need to play around Merwin and all of his weird stuff and pray to God that is enough to get them over the hump of playing against better teams than the ones that are in Europe. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, if they make it out of Swiss, I'd be relatively surprised. And that's, I want to be respectful. I really do. I really want to be respectful about Mad Lions. They've looked really, really bad throughout the entire year, bar winter. So basically everything post-winter. They squeaked in.
It was a
Fair play
tiebreaker
to
day.
them.
The tiebreaker day.
Exactly.
They won 3 games
Tiebreaker day.
in one day.
It's a complete, and when I say miracle run, I don't mean like it's a miracle they're here. I mean more the length of the journey to get here. By most definitions, it's realistically a miracle run. Does that mean I think they're hot dog water? Yeah, probably a little bit. But they figured out a solution that worked for them. And again, that was what worked for them in winter, and playing through Merwin's wacky picks. And the second that they stopped doing that and they left Merwin out on an island and they continually attempted to gank bot off cooldown time and time, it just wasn't working for them. It just wasn't. And yeah, I think their biggest potential attribute is that they have a player who has a very unique set of skills, which is very unconventional to how most teams play, and they have to try.
I can't believe he's just taken monologuing us. I can't believe it.
I'm sorry, but they have to cheese their way into Swiss. That's the only way that I can see them actually making it past the seeds in front of them.
Yeah, I think PSG are stupidly good. I think that PSG are like
good.
Yeah, they will threaten. They'll threaten major region teams, and I mean they did in MSI. In fact, I think last time I was on the show, I was talking about how PSG would probably upset major regions, and I think they did end up doing it back then. Of course, like I guess there are some question marks over the Hawks because people haven't seen them before. But Mad, another thing that you have to question about them is that every player but Elioyo was in ERLs last year. Like these are like super veteran LEC players that are gonna like bring out like years and years of international experience or like hidden troves like that. Do you want someone to add on something there, Jamada? Or that seemed like an add-on.
No, and on top of that as well, I keep apologizing, but I'm not really that sorry. These guys, Bar Elioyo, these guys have a very recent track record of choking. They do. Under pressure, they've cracked. Under pressure, they've. Look, last year EMEA finals in the venue against K Corp, that was a choke.
Okay,
because remember that was the entire roster
hostile
minus
crowd,
Elioyo.
Yeah.
Screw the hostile crowd. I was there. I saw the 50 Spanish fans in the sea of blue. They had support. I'm telling you, they made that place an absolute library when they won. But again, I don't see it. I really want to. Like, I really, really want to, because I love teams that are unique and I love teams that have their own sense of identity. but this team has been so up and down, and even after their successful series against G2, they almost immediately lost their way again.
I mean,
so it's hard for me to support this team from a sense of reason.
that's the craziest part about this team is they had the one day where they won 3 games in a row to like just make playoffs, right? And that got them the points to get like to the championship. And then they beat G2, which was enough for them to pretty much make it to Worlds, right? What's their win rate like since winter? I think it's like 40 or 44%, like something in there. I know it's sub 50.
I think it's 30 something percent,
It's
isn't it? It's pretty low.
It's 37%. It's either 36 or 38. So I'm gonna say 37.
It's ridiculous. Like the fact that they snuck in here is kind of crazy. But I mean, I don't think this is a hot take. I don't watch the like APAC teams a ton. I know PSG talent. Obviously, we've seen them, and I heard Woody was insane this split. Which he was like griefer
since they came into the LGL since 2020 spring.
Yeah.
I'm like the Hawks historian at this point.
Yeah. Like Woody for me was the griefer on PSG talent, and I guess he was like MVP or just had an awesome tournament, which is that's scary for me if I'm rooting against PSG or I'm a Mad fan. And then obviously the Hawks, they got Evie. And honestly, a couple recognizable names like Forrest was playing for T1 Challengers, Vista, a long-time 80 role swap to support from LCK, and like these guys can play too. So I like honestly at least when I look at like how the bracket panned out, this is the easiest draw that 100 Thieves could have gotten. It really is because like they're gonna have to get through either the Hawks or GAM. I don't know what you think about that match, Nymaera, but the fact they dodged out on, for me, PSG and MDK, at least on that side, is big. So yeah.
Yeah.
I
think. Yeah, go on.
Go ahead.
Sorry, which match was that? Kabi, I kind of missed that.
GAM or the SoftBank Hawks. I don't know who you got for that.
I would. Okay, so GAM have been 2v8 through top jungle throughout like most of the split. They really shouldn't have won VCS this time. Probably should have been Vikings because they're a better, well-rounded team. So it's gonna be a really fun matchup to see if Kiaya and Levi can just snowball top side on the map. They are doing that against Forest and Ebby, so that's really, really hard. Yeah, I think that Hawks are, again, they're a very well-rounded team in their own rights. Marble and Dasher, it's their first international appearances. Dasher's been playing for like 7 years, though. He's forever been the second best mid laner in LGL, either behind Saros or Arya, one of the two. So he's finally had his chance to kind of show up. But I think Hawks are just a very well-oiled machine when it comes to their big combos. They always play big teamfight wombo combos, that's kind of fair weather regardless of meta. So when it comes to meta changes, I'm pretty happy when it comes to that. The biggest thing for me will be whether they just occasionally sleepwalk their way into losing lanes. And I think, so for instance, if Hawks at some point were to match up into Mad, there's a chance that Mewin pulls out some weird top lane counter pick and they flex some stuff around like the way they did against G2, and they find winning lanes which stop Hawks from getting through to their combos. That's just one thing off the top of my head which I could think of there. But like, Forest and Vista are an insane engaged duo. I think with early skirmish junglers coming onto the menu for Forest, he's absolutely happy to play Lee Sin, Xin Sao, whatever. He's very happy with that. Jarvan as well. You name it, really. And their carries have been really stable beyond that point. So I think Hawks are I'm hoping, fingers crossed, they're one of the lower variance teams in plans and they can just kind of like, like use that stability to kind of coast their way through planes a little bit. It would only be the second time a Japanese team has made it to a group stage equivalent of Worlds, so that'd be huge outside of 21 Worlds, which was the DFM Exodia roster, which made it through there. So if they do make it over something like Mad, yeah, of course, a load of like EU fans are going to get like really upset about it because they'll be Mad bombing out of planes again, and there'll be a lot of people having laughs. Spare a thought for the Japanese teams, because like this will be a historic moment for them. It'll be only the second time which they've made it through to a group stage equivalent as well if they do make it through, and it'd be really cool to see that. I'm rooting for them.
I mean, I don't even know if they win that first round matchup. Like Shogun's actually like legitimately good player. Like Kadi actually a good player, you know.
And NB is well no, Shogun's on
right, but that's MDK's first matchup. Sorry, going back to the MDK point, like
right,
yeah. Because going off the Vikings
and also
team,
B is also really good too. B has also been one of the VCS's best supports there too. And typically, I mean, when Mad started to fall apart, when they were really good in winter, they were very, very good at hard funneling a load of their resources bot lane to set up like Alvaro for success, and then they would kind of flow that around the map after that point. But they needed like a stabilizing ganking bot side to get Alvaro into his early game plans, because like if the first play of the game went bad or wrong around bot side early on, the game would just fall apart because Alvaro and Elioya couldn't really get their stuff working. They kind of reinvented themselves into a more top side centric team around Muin later into the year, I feel. But I wonder if they're going to do that if they leave themselves exposed to Shogun, who is now the best AD carry in VCS. He wasn't before 22 MSI when he really popped off, but he has been ever since then. I think it was probably Artemis before that point. So yeah, I think there are some openings for Mad to lose that matchup. I think that could actually be quite a dangerous thing. And of course, VCS teams are so they are VCS are a hugely explosive region. They find fights out of nowhere and they just keep fighting to remove cooldowns from you. So yeah, there's a decent chance that that Mad can bomb out here.
I just am glad that we all agree that LCS is stronger than LEC going into this Worlds. And I think that's what we're all talking about whenever we just had that big discussion right now about Mad Lions and everybody, right?
Sure. Yeah, whatever makes you happy. Whatever gets us invited back.
I mean, we just said 100 Thieves going to make it through. Mad Lions not. It's just more evidence.
It's just Mad Lions and Pliance, man. Just Mad Lions and Pliance, man. What can I say?
The pile is building up. All right. Lazerfruit, anything that you would add to this far wide-ranging discussion that transcended not just Mad Lions, but also several other regions all over the
You gave
the
me
world?
one opening to talk about minor regions. I'm sorry. It had to be done.
I know. It's okay. It's so funny because Jamada went on his monologue, and then somebody asked him a question about Premier League, and he just like was a Twitch chat warrior for the next 5 minutes. Yeah, while you handled everything.
Just don't ask him what he thinks of Tottenham next. You know.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is. Okay, but Lazerfruit, anything that you would add to any of this?
I just thought there would be more resistance to that.
Yeah,
No.
I'm happy that the take
individuals here.
normally
We've watched a lot of LEC.
Normally when somebody comes in on a take, when people agree, we just go, yeah, sounds about right. It's like a rough call. This was great though, because you like triggered these people, and then they went on, they like trauma dumped about Mad Lions, so it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Lazerfruit, thank you though. Anything you want to shout out?
Yeah, I'd like to shout out all the Champions Queue streams that have been going on. This has been the best pre-Worlds content since Cloud9 boot camp streams.
Yeah. No, I mean, I always love it whenever they get to do this stuff going. I am really happy that Riot created Champions Queue because it ends up being like an appetizer, right, to the main event. So pretty cool that they were able to do that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the call. And we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. We have one last caller onto the show. I'll get them right now. Gerg, thank you for the 6 months. Donata for the 10. Gurnt gifted 5 subs. Mehir gifted a sub to Don Jake. I'm surprised he wasn't sub previously. JB, Immortal Scrub. PP Doc gifted a sub to Jamada. And Numi gifted a sub to Saki. Jogoat Ba, Yeshua, Raging Pianist, PP Doc, Let's Fight in Love, Shavul, Ceaseless Ocean, and Akarn Liberated. Thank you all for your subs and support over on YouTube. Things are strangely quiet over there. But if you want to become a YouTube member, doing so gets you early access to some content, including a couple of interviews that are up right now. One with Golden Glue and one with Umpty. So consider becoming a YouTube member. Thanks everybody though for your support. We have our final caller coming in here in just a second. Any moment, Cubby's going to pull them in. I thought he was going off to do that. Now he's doing it. I don't know why he waited. He just wanted to listen to me read off a bunch of stuff. Shout out, by the way, speaking of off-topic things, shout out to Jeweled Lotus and Manacrypt. All right, we got Delfino here. Delfino, what do you want to talk about on the show? Or actually, sorry, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Orlando, Florida.
Orlando, Florida. Why are people spamming Plink in the chat? Is that in reference to you coming on the show? What is Plink?
I don't think so.
Okay. Everybody keeps saying Plink.
Where's your Plink emote, Travis?
What do you want to talk about on the show?
I'm throwing.
Okay, so my official take, I'm reading this straight off of what I typed. Based only on public information, Jojopyun displayed unacceptable behavior in a team environment. However, based on the reactions from the people in the community and people who personally know him, he deserves another chance on a top team who will support him and help him work through any issues he might have. If they need any explanation, I do have like a full. I have like a bunch of notes and stuff.
You created a binder. We were talking
it's
earlier
made
about
by my friends,
Don Jake being Nymaera's lawyer, but it sounds like you're going to be Jojo's lawyer over the course of this.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Does he show up on time to those meetings?
All right.
He doesn't show up at all. Okay.
That was a good one, Cubby. Okay. So go ahead and lay out the case in defense of Jojopyun.
In defense of Jojopyun. Well, okay. First, the first part of the take where I said Jojopyun displayed unacceptable behavior in our team environment.
Well,
Now, this...
sorry, really quickly. I do want to just say that this is alleged.
Yeah. This is what I said
like,
based on public information. Like, this is not 100% true. This is based on I Will Dominate's video about the situation.
Yeah, presumably from C9 sources. So.
Yes, presumably from internal sources. Basically, he said that like Jojo showed up late, 43, however many times. And personally, like that is completely unacceptable from anyone on a team environment. It's super disrespectful to your teammates, and it's not conducive for improving and winning, which we can obviously see with C9 getting 4th, not making Worlds, way below expectations for their roster. However, despite that, the part about everybody who knows him vouching for him, I have a list here. Razvan, ex-coach, vouched for him on Twitter. Beora, Kelsey, Peter Dunn, Rigby, Angie Barton, Dr. Respawn, Inspired, Fudge, Cubby, Whippo, and Blabber, and Inspired again.
Wait,
in
Fudge
the past,
defended him?
well, somewhat.
I don't know how I
kinda.
got on that list.
He said, Jojo is not lazy, that's a myth. A little unprofessional maybe, but not lazy. A lot of the people defended his work ethic and kind of disagreed with the people that were saying that it was a work ethic issue and that he shouldn't be on a team anymore because of it. And that alone kind of, because I had a very harsh take at first, because I'm a person who like just personally I just really hate having my time wasted, and that is like the epitome of wasting other people's time. So I had a very harsh take, but my opinion changed when I saw everybody who had known him personally defending him and like going out of their way to say that he's a hard worker and he wasn't having issues like this on previous teams, e.g. So that's kind of my take, that like my take softened a lot based on that.
Okay. Yeah, I also feel I've tried to talk about this in the video that I did, but for me right now, this is still what is annoying to me is that the community has essentially taken one side's claims, which is presumably C9 through their conversations and taken that as if it was completely accurate, and it could be, but again, like the Jojopyun camp that I've heard is like contesting that, like the allegations that there were moments in time where he was late, but they are not they do not add up to what has been alleged publicly as to how often he's been late. And so I do think that the situation is more nuanced, and it's a little disappointing to me, and perhaps it's just because like it was first movers advantage, where like the story first came out and everybody heard the number, and it was so ostentatious that they latched onto it, that there has not been a sort of conversation around like, okay, maybe there is something in between the number that was said publicly.
There is a third option here where both parties are at fault.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry. Go ahead.
I think factually both parties are at fault.
Oh God, yeah.
I don't see another take that's even close to remotely reasonable. If you're Jojo, unless there is something going on, 43 times is an unacceptable level of tardiness.
An alleged 43 times, by the way.
Sorry,
this is what I keep trying to get in. I don't know if it was actually 43 times,
of course,
right? That's alleged,
of course, right. The alleged number of 43 times is unacceptable. There is one point that I feel like I didn't see spoken about enough, which in my head does factor in to a slight level of importance, is how late was he to be classified as late?
That's true. It could be like 1 minute or 10 minutes or 20 minutes.
Because the line in that regard is wherever C9 decides to draw it, right? If you're supposed to be at practice at, 12:50 and Jojo's showing up at 12:52 every single time, is he factually late to practice? Yes. Is he practically late to practice? Cubby, you've been in some coaching environments before.
Unless it
I'm
was
sure
agreed
you know
upon
the
beforehand. That's the other
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
a lot of the
And then
time,
there's-
that if they are using it to terminate a contract or something like that, if that is the eventuality as to
so-
whatever, then that does need to be like
exactly
formalized somewhere, which we don't know about.
Exactly, right? So is there a grace period here? Are we talking about being so late that he's preventing sessions from starting? These are other factors that I feel like I didn't see many people speak about. Still, regardless, 43 allegedly.
It's egregious.
It's still really bad. And then the other side, of course, is just simply coaching staff or management or whoever is supposed to discipline that has clearly not stepped in.
Yeah.
Has clearly
if
not
I
stepped
could,
in. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen.
If I could expand on that point about the coaching
Yeah.
staff and management, part of the people speaking out, especially the ex-EG staff, were talking about how they had things in place in order to help him not kind of like have that kind of excessive tardiness, that type of behavior. And a lot of them were like, it's kind of suspicious that he's having this type of behavior when we had measures to prevent or help it, which is why I said in my take that he needs a chance on a top team who will support him and help him work through any issues he might have.
Sure.
So I think part of it, definitely like there's fault in both parties. But yeah, like the other part I wanted to say was like, it's definitely like partly on C9 because if it was working before, and so it's not sudden that it just like stopped, like he just like became like a less driven person. I think
Hang on a
it's
second.
partly on the fault of the management.
So you were talking. So presumably this means that this is a feature of JoJo where he's had support for this on previous teams in the past, right?
Yes.
So it was like a known thing.
EG staff mentioned that he's had support for
Right.
things like this.
Are you seriously telling me that this happened with JoJo, but not JoJo, with M&S before him the year before, the king of, we know he's had XYZ issues before, we'll get support for him. They've had this 2 years in a row with their star mid laners that'll come through. This is just mind blowing to me that they've rolled this dice poorly 2 times over. They've just not been prepared for like whatever they assume to know about these players coming into them and trying to set up something to support them. That is wild to me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, first off, in the camp where like obviously both parties are at fault in some sort, and the truth will be probably never revealed, but like it is somewhere in the middle, and we've only heard C9's side so far. I'm with Jamada in the sense where it's like, how late are we? Like, is it an impact of team environment, or is it an impact of like, hey, you aren't meeting our criteria for what it takes to be successful as a member of C9, right? And then are we like, I mean, there's a big difference between being an hour late to like a team like strategy meeting, or are they tracking like, hey, we require everyone to work out and he's late to the gym, right? I would argue that that's obviously important time for making sure that you're healthy as a person, but also that is kind of like on you. And all like JoJo's team has to do in this is just be like, hey, at one point did C9 stop saying this was a problem and then kept on counting? Because like that's like where the cynic comes in, right? And that's pretty much like where, I mean, there's probably a lot more info that we aren't privy to. But like if I'm JoJo's team, like, I mean, that's where I'm at. And like everything is just so weird about this because again, in an off season where players have a minimum buyout of $100,000, which was that was the case in the past, like 2-3 years ago, right? You would never, ever, ever have a team like dropping info like this or sneaking it out, right? And I do like at the moment, I mean, just because we haven't heard any info on JoJo's part, like I am also sympathetic to JoJo in this. And I think it's really funny how the EG staff who, I mean, obviously some of that crew was there for when Danny was there. They were on the same team. They got a lot of flack. Like for them to get JoJo to perform at a better margin than what C9 did and like to have all of that like happen, I don't know. I find it interesting. Like it's very clear to me that EG got a lot more out of JoJo than what C9 did. And whether that was JoJo wasn't willing to work with C9, obviously C9 is right to, not take him next year if they felt like he was that big of a problem. But just to see like how this is going down, like there is a lot of reason for me to like, and for all of us to kind of be skeptical. So I don't really know what's going to happen with this. I mean, it could come out like C9 terminates the contract and like all of like us putting on the skeptical hat, like it's just, it is what it is. Like it's not going to go anywhere, but also who knows? Like this could be very interesting moving forward. So I don't know. It all just feels really weird, and I am very sympathetic towards JoJo, unironically, in this. Now, this would never be a problem if you didn't show up, or like if you did show up on time, but I think there's a lot more that like is behind this. It's just such a weird thing that everyone's tunneled in on, and like that's the one piece of info that was dropped. Like then, like what's actually going on? It feels so weird. Everyone's late, man. Everyone's late to this shit. Scrims are always starting late.
It's true.
I am very interested to see what ends up happening for JoJo next year. Like one thing that was interesting was that there were so many top comments in that Reddit thread were like, man, JoJo's LCS career is just shot. No one will ever want to work with this player again. It's just who would be crazy enough to pick him up after this news came out?
If you didn't work with someone who like was late once, no one would have a team in League.
By the way,
no one would have a team.
There's just the difference because LEC scrims are like ridiculously poor quality when it comes to late and stuff like that too. I heard a story of an LEC team going on a walk between games in a scrim block and just like not telling the other team. They just went on a walk and they came back like an hour later. It's like, can we still play? And they're like, well, I guess. Like, there's like the difference between LEC and LCS when it comes to that is I don't know if that is a more clear picture of it. It is also quite amusing to me. LEC, there was actually a really good interview with who was it? Trying to remember who was the guy that came into Heretics, Jamada. After Perks came in.
Kire? Was
Zvera, yeah. Or Zwiru.
Yeah.
Whatever, I get the pronunciation wrong. He had an interview with Sheep Esports where he was talking about how unprofessional he found LEC scrims compared to ERL scrims. That was really interesting. So if you want to get like another perspective on another scene in terms of like professionality and scrims and stuff like that, would have been back in, well, spring or summer. I can't remember. It's whenever Perks was replaced and Zvera came in. He had an interview there where he alluded to the fact that LEC scrims were unacceptably bad in terms of professionality there. And then just comparing it to like, a top player on a top team in LCS kind of like being late stuff, sure. But if it's not that egregious, it's just so much worlds apart from some other regions where we've seen tardiness.
I mean, pretty much every team, like in LCS, if you show up late, you are the one that pays for the coffee order. That's pretty much how every team works it out here, right? Like that is your lot of coffees. It is. Like it is an expensive reason to, like not be late.
It's such an LA answer to this problem, by the way. Like it's so
well,
funny to me that like
that's something that was
how
on
you're
my
gonna
mind.
Escape poverty, you know. You got to stop buying these coffees and having your avocado toast. It's this ruining these players' finances.
It was something that was on the tip of my tongue because it's something that happens in football, not soccer, football.
Soccer. Yeah.
Wait, which? I'm confused.
Football. The real one, not the hand egg one.
Right.
Is if you're late, you get fined. Like a fairly big one at that too. Like reasonable to what they get paid. Yeah, like if you're on salary, if you're on 50 grand a week, you're getting fined anywhere from 2 to like 8 grand for being late to a practice session.
Based on your paycheck.
I have heard findings. I'm not a lawyer, but I have heard that it's complicated to do like a fine structure in California because of employment law,
right?
And the way that these contracts are.
Respectfully, your country's worker laws are horrid, as to begin with. Not to get into that can of worms.
California's. I just talked about a situation where workers are protected within the state.
Protected how?
If it's harder for people to fine an employee than for some sort of thing or to detract from their salary, that is like a worker protection. That is not an employer protection.
Sure, but in the case of I like I said, I'm not gonna get into it. But again,
and by the way, there's a bunch of reasons why JoJo still, but like I've heard part of the thing
of course,
is that it might be hard for JoJo's contract to get. C9 will have to do a lot to potentially get out of this because of California worker law.
Yeah, that is floating around.
Oh, well, That's good, but I'm just talking about
Yeah.
my general experience with
Sure.
people I know in
He
America.
just wanted to
with
rant about
certain
your
worker laws.
country. Just let him go.
Maybe, yeah.
But by the
London
way,
sucks.
I think the other funny part about this is that all of this was like an open secret with JoJo. Like there are people like digging up like old tweets of like teammates and teams. Like it's not like JoJo struggled to show up on time, and so like, again, C9 knew this. Like they were signing up for this. Everyone kind of knew this behind the scenes
They
going
knew
in.
about
So,
M&S, and we saw how that worked.
yeah. So yeah, like the fact that they weren't prepared for this, or like this is
2
their
years
solution
in a
to it,
row.
is really weird.
Again,
It is really weird.
I think there's just a good chance people are trying to get out of a contract. Like
Yes,
I don't.
I mean, you said it now,
that's
Travis.
what- I mean,
yeah.
I think
I said
like,
it in the intro.
Yes.
when you talk, no, I know. I just it's
Why we're skeptical.
It is aggravating to me because
Yes.
I don't understand why that is not more the general conversation happening out there. Like, I appreciate Delphi coming on to defend JoJo, but I feel like the initial premise, and I think it's good that she is because that's kind of where the community has put the conversation. But I feel like the conversation needs to back up to like, okay, is this actually a thing that's happened and JoJo needs, should be decried as a malicious person, or should we just say, hey, let's wait and see what the results are of this stuff, because it sounds like this was perhaps documented on so many different occasions as a means of exiting a contract. And by the way, I've seen some people kind of talking about this. The reason why you would want to get out of a contract is because you might think that nobody will pick up the contract because the contract is too expensive, because in C9's case, I think a lot of people have speculated that their coaching staff was slim and they don't have a tier 2 system, in part because of the amount of money they were spending on their roster, the greatest amount of that money presumably going to JoJo. So
also with other teams, they expanded a lot to play in EWC, and they did not do well in that. Like,
and who's gonna pick? I'm sure that they still made EWC stuff is weird, but who's gonna pick up JoJo's big contract next year? Like Team Liquid's not gonna drop APA.
Buyout doesn't matter.
I think FlyQuest is pretty
picking up the
happy.
contract.
Yeah, exactly. So no
contract.
one's gonna pick up the contract. So you have to figure out a way to get out of this. So this is a solution. I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong. JoJo could be a team terrorist that was intentionally showing up to not to tank the team, and they are like trying to get this information out there because they want to warn every other team that's out there not to bring this guy in, because he will do everything he can, including just never show up to practice in order to do this. But I just think that the conversation
Next, they're gonna bring in like Vasily
nuanced.
out of the woodwork to see how many more keyboards he can break. Swing. What's the worst player you can bring on?
Yeah. Elias asks in the chat, is that not negotiable? I think if you were not trying, it's if so if a team wanted to buy out, normally my understanding of the situation is if JoJo had a contract and let's say Team Liquid was like, fuck APA, we want to get rid of him, we're going to get JoJo, if you want to transfer the contract, you have to transfer it entirely. You could then engage in conversations about renegotiating the contract and for perhaps an extension or something along those lines.
Yeah, because sometimes it's just a buyout for a transfer fee, and then you renegotiate, or like after negotiations. Sometimes the negotiations are completed besides that, but the buyout is like the part of the initial contract.
I think. Different. Well, I think in this situation, the way you would think about it is like Team Liquid's like, okay, probably no one else is going to buy out this contract, and we don't want to spend this much every. Like, if you think you can get JoJo for less money, which I think that should be the general assumption, given that the team underperformed, that there is stronger competition in the mid lane this year than there was last year, and also that the budgets have gone down dramatically for teams, especially because if there's been a lot of conversation behind the scenes, and I think even some public conversations around the idea that Riot's going to be giving teams less money next year in the LCS, then you would think like, okay, we don't need to buy out his existing contract. We can just wait until C9 drops him and he becomes a free agent. Yep. And then you can get him at that point in time for less. So like, there's no incentive for people to negotiate the existing contract and then to pay the buyout. You just wait until the player gets dropped and then you start a new contract negotiation. So that's sort of what I think is going on here. Okay. Yeah, sorry. That was all for the people just joining. That's all theoretical. I'm not alleging any of that is what is happening. I am just suggesting that this seems like a complicated situation, and I think there's been some dispute. I mean, I know there's been dispute from the JoJo camp as to like some of the public allegations about how he was there.
I just find it so funny
Travis?
that okay.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I find it really funny that like this is the level of drama which has somehow like been exploding everywhere. Like so much worse stuff goes on in so many different teams. Like in terms of like the level of crazy stuff
There's
goes
gotta
on
be
behind
more.
it. The fact that the fact that people being late is like somehow getting up to this kind of level of controversy. I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me. One,
It's because nobody does blame
yeah.
game anymore, or not blame game. That's so funny.
Right.
Nobody does breaking point anymore. Like teams obfuscate
True,
the drama that
true,
happens
yeah.
behind the scenes, so the community has a very poor understanding of actually how crazy things can get behind the scenes in these competitive environments. And so whenever something like this leaks out in what could have potentially been like a strategic leak, then everybody acts shocked at the idea of a player being late, when in reality there's probably a lot more intense stuff
Like
happening.
of all the drama that's happened in League Esports, why is this the thing which has exploded right here? There are so like that it does confuse me a little bit.
I
This
think
feels like
well
such
we've
a
also had a
nothing
very
burger on a certain
quiet
level.
we've had a very quiet year
This is
in
juicy.
LCS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll need to plug into the LPL drama, man. This stuff is wild over here.
Yeah. Delphi, you were gonna say something.
Oh, I was just gonna ask because I saw some people who were confused after your video. Like, what exactly did you mean by like the JoJo camp? Do you mean like JoJo himself, or like his management, his agent, whatnot?
I can't specify exactly who my sources are, I guess is what I would say.
Okay.
But I would say, like in any situation like this, you have two parties, right? You have like the C9 group, and then on one end of sort of the alleged situation, and then you have like obviously JoJo has people around him and people that
Mhm.
are associated with him who will take sort of the opposing side. And I think as a way of obfuscating like exactly who the individuals were that I had conversations with, I used the term camp because I think that's used oftentimes in like sports reporting.
Yeah, I mean, the like agent, manager, like people on their team, like whoever's around JoJo, right? That camp.
Mhm.
So yeah, hopefully that clarifies that. Was that
Okay.
that was your question specifically, Delphi? I thought you were going to bring something else up.
Oh, yeah, and also I wanted to mention that I think comparing the relationship between like JoJo and like C9 management to like one-to-one to like a boss employee relationship is like not equivalent, and I think it's kind of disingenuous to compare it to like a corporate boss employee relationship, which is what I see happening a lot, because I think that dynamic is entirely different than a player in management. Because a lot of people are
Especially if they're
using
a star player.
I think like because a lot of people are using it to say like, oh, like I would have been fired at my corporate 9 to 5 job. Well, I don't think your management, your relationship with your boss is the same as JoJo's relationship with the C9 management. And I don't think I think it's very disingenuous to compare the two.
Yeah, I don't think
if you're
that,
a star player, then it's not nearly the same. But yeah.
People just are immature and don't understand that. And I think there's also sometimes a sense of like envy or whatever about people in positions of influence or stardom, and so in these moments I think people are like, how dare this person act this way. But yeah, thank you, Delphi. Anything you want to shout out here at the end?
2 things. My best friend and roommate, who is currently in the room with me, she thinks that HLE is going to go on a run like the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals against the Mavericks, just like sweeping the whole tournament. And I also want to shout out my good friends, my NMN friends, and they helped me formulate this take and helped me refine it, and also gave me the big doc with all the information. So shout out to them.
I appreciate. Will you be making this document publicly available in his defense?
That is not up to me.
Okay.
I mean, I can ask, but
If you're actually the
kidding.
lawyer, I wouldn't spoil the argument.
Yeah.
you're so
Yeah,
right.
exactly. You don't want the prosecution to gain early advantage on looking at your notes. Thank you so much, Delphi, for the call. And we'll catch you next
Thank you
time.
for having me on. Bye bye.
Yeah. All right. Thank you to Jamada and Nymaera for suffering through LCS drama takes. I think
And yeah, really talking about LCS, nothing burger drama at 6 a.m. That really, I guess we going.
Someone from EU should have put out a statement about how their players are early, for 43 times straight. I feel like that would have been a really good shit post that we just missed out on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nymaera, are we gonna play Magic?
I don't play that much Magic. Sure, I mean we can do. I mean Sam has a commander deck. He's finally picked one up, so I can watch you play.
You seem to have a reaction about the
I saw the
comments.
ban. Look, I like Magic. I played Warhammer growing up, so I had plastic crack. I didn't need cardboard crack.
Oh, okay.
That was my game of choice.
All right. Well, I will find other people to play Magic with in Germany next week.
There's always Medic and crew. They're the big Magic heads.
I hope so, but they're so hard to get out whenever they're doing the broadcast stuff, and so and I assume it'll be more difficult where they won't be staying in a hotel necessarily, and so I won't be able to just drag them downstairs to a lobby. So I guess we'll see.
I'm sure we'll find something to do. I will seek you out.
Okay, sounds good. All right, that is the show. Thanks everyone for watching. Cubby, anything you want to shout out here? We'll do a round of shout outs.
Shout out to anyone that tuned into America's Challengers and supported all the teams in that tournament. I know I gave him a shout out at the start, but it was actually a really fun tier 2 crossover that kind of previewed what next year is going to look like for Americas. And then shout out to these guys for joining us at the crazy hour, and then the NA teams going to Worlds. Best of luck. I'm really excited to tune into the tournament, and shout out to Travis and the sponsors as well. Always fun to do this show and hear everyone's impassioned takes for Worlds. It's a fun time of year coming up.
Yeah. Nymaera, any shout outs, plugs, anything you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who tuned into any LPL content this year, really big shout out to you. It's been a weird year to be an LPL caster. There's been a lot of criticism towards the broadcast, and it's always been a very fluctuating future. We didn't broadcast after the game, so I co-streamed a ton of them. I think I ended up doing near enough 500 games this year, which is just a lot. So for anyone who's watched, supported, and left a kind comment, really means a lot, especially with the whole World's news as well and stuff like that. I had a lot of support through. Means an awful lot. In terms of shouting stuff out, I'm going to be on a bunch of different podcasts yapping about, anything really. I'm just a yapper, really. I'm starting to do a little bit more of my own video content as well over my YouTube, so if that's something which enjoys you and you don't get too annoyed by my voice, that's a thing. So yeah, those are my shout outs.
What is your YouTube channel?
Alex Nymaera, Hapgood. Yeah,
I got him.
That one.
Okay.
Thanks. Cool.
Jamada.
Yeah. Me and Don Jake technically just started a show that we haven't actually recorded yet. That is going to be going up soon. So I suppose I'll shout that out.
Wait, is it actually Cold Line League?
It's not actually called Cold Line League, Travis.
After all, I brought you on, and then Don Jake was messaging me, and he was saying "Oh, how could you?" Blah blah.
He was quite upset. But I think he'll be happy with this. 6 Scrubs and Chips. We're kind of still working on when we're going to get this first episode recorded. It should be hopefully within this next week, which means pretty short release afterwards. So no set time on it, but expect it during playings, more or less. Yeah. That's going to be good fun. And then just my personal channels, really. Twitter, YouTube stuff I'm pushing out. It's just mostly clips for the time being. Fun stuff that happens on my stream. Otherwise, yeah, thank you so much for having me, and it's been a blast.
One last shout out, by the way, just the other LPL casters as well, which have gone through it with me and Jamada. So that's Mizal, Munchables, Ashin, who's done production this year. He's done a hell of a job. Then of course Troublelink, our fellow color caster as well, and Lyric. Lyric's a fucking G. Love Lyric so much. All of them have put in so much work this year for the LPL. It's been great working alongside them, and of course you, Jamada, as well. It's been really. You were right. It was really cool to get to cast at LPL finals too. That was actually a really cool moment. So shout out to all the other LPL casters.
And then you will not be in Berlin, Jamada.
No, I'm located in London. They didn't hire me for Worlds either. Yeah, I don't know. They hate me.
I will see you presumably when I'm out there for finals.
Yes, absolutely. When you come back for finals, I'll be here. Okay. I haven't got tickets yet. I don't know if I'm gonna get tickets. I don't know.
I somehow got tickets. I actually did get World's Finals tickets, so I will be there. Just
okay.
Lucky.
Do you have a +1? Because I know somebody who's looking to go. So his name is Jamada. Is the joke?
Yeah. So Jamada, if you murder my brother, No, he didn't react. Yeah, you can have it.
Okay.
That's an easy task. All right, yeah, sure.
Easy.
No,
In
no
game,
problem.
in game. Thank you, Twitch.
In game.
And we're on a
in-game.
list. Yeah.
Yes. No. Okay. Well, I'm trying to figure. I really don't want to fly on Halloween, but right now I might have to. Maybe I'll fly on. Does London celebrate Halloween? If I go in early, can I do fun? Dude, London fucking sucks. I hate this city so much.
You know
It's got shit weather. I can't believe people fought over that goddamn island for so long.
Hey. First off, I agree with you about the weather. Second off, it made sense that they battled over the island. There was a lot of tin on it. Third off, our food is really good, and you guys that came over for MSI
Oh
last
my
year
god!
were
Oh my god!
absolutely
Fantastic.
You lot were
This is insane.
terrible.
You went to, like, out in
terrible.
Oh my god!
Terrible. Absolute. You lot, right?
This
And you're in
is insane.
Stratford, in the shopping district of London,
Dude.
outside of the
He's
Zone 1
actually
places
so based.
like
You
the
were
West
so
End.
based, Jamada, actually.
And you lot, I'm so convinced. You guys sat down. You got to Stratford, right? You went on your phone and you went, food near me. And you just threw it out into the ocean
No.
and you just prayed that the nearest thing next to you
already,
was
I'll
going to
give
be
you
good.
a couple of freebies. Koya Soho, great udon. There's
It's
Asa,
so
great Korean
funny.
hot pot.
Look,
There's Coco.
Because you'll tell a London person that their food
listen,
sucks, and they'll be like, "No,
No,
you didn't go to the right place.
no.
You just got to go to one of these 5
Yes.
different restaurants."
No! Because
It's an
you can
internationally
find
recognized
Travis.
food hotspot.
Wait, you can find if you threw a dart at the map of the world. I
Just go
promise
to
you
any
there
curry
is.
place.
Wait. I promise you, if you threw a dart at the map of the world and it landed on land, there would be a community of people from that place on the planet that specializes in their specific cuisine and has a restaurant in London. But you guys, I am convinced, just went to the nearest applicable
Jamada,
place.
Where's the good Mexican food in
Yeah.
London?
Elephant and Castle.
Elephant Castle?
Actually, fair play.
Elephant
There's
and Castle.
There's also there's like one not bad place just off of Covent Garden as well. That's kind of pricey though. I can't remember the name of it, but that was pretty good.
Elephant and Castle, you're gonna find all of the authentic stuff because that is where a lot of the Hispanic communities, I've come to learn very recently actually.
I just
live in
googled.
London.
It says
Travis.
Elephant and Castle Pub and Restaurant. But
No,
I
Elephant Castle
want the
is-
name.
It's a tube station.
I want the name of a Mexican restaurant. I thought you were telling me the name of a Mexican restaurant. This is
Travis,
an
you're
area.
not finding better Mexican food in London than you do in LA. You should try something.
According to
else.
Jamada,
Yeah,
I will.
That's absolutely the case. You're not gonna find I've been to Texas as well. It's not quite Mexico, but it's obviously right next to it.
The Tex-Mex, unreal.
Tex-Mex is fucking incredible. You're
Yep.
not gonna find Mexican food that's gonna rival, a Mexican food here that's gonna rival that. But almost every other cuisine on the planet,
there we
I
go.
promise you,
There's the best ramen outside of Japan in London as well. There's Canada
Yep.
Near Tottenham Court Road. That's fucking great.
Yep.
Canada
Yep,
great.
there's
Ippado's just across the road. That's awesome
Yep.
too.
Okay, so
Yeah,
here's what I'm open to considering, which is that there are specific restaurants that you can go to in London.
take you to these places
Okay, so you please don't do.
complain.
Please do. But here's what I will say.
do this for you, so I don't have to hear
Here's-
this again.
No, here's what I'll say. I think what is frustrating to I think a lot of especially Americans, especially ones that live in LA, is that you can walk into almost any restaurant or like eatery in LA and you can get food that is like pretty good. It's not going to be it's like there's a ton of places that are amazing, but like anything in LA that is not pretty good just like goes out of business essentially. In London, it seems as though the average place you walk into is going to be pretty mediocre. Like you go to Century City Mall, which is I won't dox myself, but it is within a 15-minute drive.
Yeah, like don't
from,
get a hot
from my
dog out
home.
of the stall at like Trafalgar Square or something. That will in fact send you to the toilet for 3 days straight.
But I'm saying if you go to Century City Mall in LA, you go to any of those food places there, you're gonna get good food, even in the food court. By the way, I guess like they have Panda or whatever, which maybe is depending on your opinion on Panda Express, but you're gonna get food. I went to what was the place I was staying in? Stratford.
Yeah.
And like everything at that mall, I went into a Mexican restaurant there, and I like to try Mexican in other places.
Ate from the same restaurant I think you're talking about.
Yes,
it's on the top floor and the center of the mall. Yeah, more or less.
It was
kind of like
outside.
It was like a strip of it was like a small strip.
And I just was like, this is insane that this restaurant can exist and serve this food. And it could be at an expensive, like the property cost there must be pretty high because that mall is it's a Westfield, much like the Century City Mall. And I know that it's pretty expensive. And I was just like, how is this, how can they serve this food to people and stay in business?
Just go anywhere in Soho or Chinatown.
Don't know about
anywhere in Soho or Chinatown. Like, you're gonna get great food.
Did you manage to go to Leicester Square and Chinatown during your stay?
I'd been to Chinatown one time when I went out for esports awards before I decided it was.
Yes, there's Misato, which is pretty good.
But did you eat out of almost any like?
I went to one place there and it tasted sort of like a mid-level Chinese food place here in LA. So maybe I didn't go to the right one, but I will say that mid-level Chinese food was probably better than most of the other food I've ever eaten in London. But I think that the average in London is like not great. And then there are probably some places you have to go.
Forget all the rest of this noise. Have you ever had Caribbean food before?
No, actually.
Actually, all right, cool. We're gonna sort you out, man. We're
gonna sort you out. We have plans.
Yeah,
we have plans out of the kindness of our hearts.
Yeah. I'm ready for whenever I get to my hotel and you guys are like, okay, so you just need to take an hour-long tube ride, or the tunnel. What do you guys call it again? The tube.
Well, hang on, no. The thing is that to get towards Chinatown, Soho, now you just take Elizabeth Line, which is like 2 stops from anywhere. Like it's just east to west. Like, and most of the place, if you're like around O2 for like finals, it's just Elizabeth Line in pretty much. I'm pretty sure it's not even that difficult.
But how long am I gonna have to be on? You said 2 stops.
Yeah, I would say like it's about 30 minute journey. To get to them.
30-minute journey tops, because I'm assuming they're going to keep you somewhere relatively local.
I mean, I book it. Nobody keeps me
you book
anywhere.
It. All right.
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool.
Riot's not putting me up.
You're going to be local. From Greenwich, you can go to almost anywhere in central London in about 25 minutes.
Yep.
Shouldn't be hard.
Okay.
Should not be hard at all.
Yeah. Just make sure you're like somewhere within walking distance of the tube stop, obviously.
I just want to say again, without doxing myself, I don't need to go 30 minutes in any direction to get good food in LA. Like,
yes, but if you get to the right place of London, you will have some of the best food out there. Like, I think London has some of the best food places out there. It's genuinely internationally renowned.
So pretty much like what this conversation came down to was much like our teams at Worlds, the peak somewhat equivalent, but the majority better in NA, right, Travis?
Yes, that's accurate.
Why did we come on here, Adrian? Why are we here?
You guys,
top 6.
You brought this up.
Argue with people who have not experienced London.
No, that's not me. That's not me.
I've never been to London. You guys are talking about it just like it's the back of your hand.
Dude, Cubby, don't go. The weather's shit. The food is shit. It's expensive. It's insane. Apparently, they have a lot of tin. That's their claim to fame. Had a lot. They don't even have the tin anymore.
That's all in Cornwall.
Yeah. All right.
And the Industrial Revolution ran its course.
So here's my shout outs, because we've been on Jamada shout outs for the last 15 minutes and we lost a bunch of viewership while we were on them. We got shout outs to some subs. We got a Karn Liberated, the Dixie Cup for 2 years. Asisa, EMBW, Dark Tarkanis, and Jaffe. Shout out to PrizePicks for sending me to London, to London. I shout out to them to sending me to Worlds. I'm not going to shout them out for sending me to London, but sending me to Worlds twice. Flights over to Europe are expensive. And then also shout out to I had one more shout out I was going to make, and I don't remember what it is. So we'll do that next time. The next time you see the show, I'll be in Europe. It will probably be at a different time because I will have to probably be waking up for Worlds, or I'll have an staying,
and I'm going to talk to you more about London food. That's it now. That's it.
Oh god. I don't know what's worse, honestly. I honestly don't know what's worse, London or Berlin food. They're both so goddamn.
Berlin. No. Don't.
I can show you like some okay places, but
no, don't put disrespect to my city.
That's it. I'm out.
All right, thanks everyone. That's for the show. We'll see you next week.